We're ready now.
You ready now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll get it. I'll get it.
We on, Janice?
Yes, we're recording.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for the delay. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Montclair Planning Board. Notice of this meeting is published in the local papers and also in the lobby of this building. We are being streamed live on Channel 34 and broadcast live on YouTube. This meeting is a quasi-judicial proceeding, meaning we have powers and we follow procedures resembling a court of law, and we are obligated to objectively determine facts and draw conclusions from them in order to provide the basis for official action. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that the board can legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate for a judicial hearing should be maintained at all times. First up is our roll call.
Chair Nguyen,
Here.
Vice Chair Brodock,
Here.
Mr. Schwartz.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Councilor Schlager.
Here.
Ms. Willis.
Here.
Mr. Rooney.
Here.
Mr. Ian Wally is excused. Ms. Lockman. Here. Mr. Barr.
Here.
Mr. Gilmer.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, we have minutes from our September 23rd meeting.
I received comments from Ms. Lockman, which were distributed to other members of the board. Are there any other changes to the minutes? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve as amended.
Yes. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay.
I think I wasn't here for.
Yeah, that's Vice Chair Brodock, Mr. Schwartz, and Mr. Gilmer.
Great.
Okay. We have listed as item under our old business, the application of 2610, application 2610 rather, Platinum Interiors for 96 High Street, and that has been continued to our August 12th meeting
No.
at the applicant's
No.
request.
No, continued from.
October 23rd.
I'm sorry, continued, yes, sorry. Continued from August 12th to our October 21st meeting.
In
at
August, we would
the-
have needed a waiver.
At the applicants, well, you know, we can always make these retroactive.
And there'll be
So-
no additional notice.
No additional notice.
So if anyone's here for that application, it'll not be heard tonight. It'll be heard on the 21st of October.
And then that brings us to the continuation of the application 2582 on 37 Orange Road.
We want to discuss the procedural issue. Why don't you put your appearance on the record?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Thomas Troutner. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Chiesa, Shaheni, and Tomasi here on behalf of the applicant HP 37.
Thank you. We had this, the chair, myself, the vice chair, and Mr. Schwartz. We all had a conversation prior to the meeting about the last meeting. At the start of the last meeting, Mr. Schwartz made a brief comment about the procedure of how this case arrived here and on the density question. He took some issue with that procedure, both at the government and at the zoning board levels. And there was some concern from him having done that it may have expressed a bias or a predecision of the case. I've talked to Mr. Schwartz. I'm very confident that he recognizes the zoning board's decision and the density required in this case. But in an effort to make sure that we have a case that's free from litigation, I've asked the applicant if they would waive his statement in his statement only as an appealable issue. And under the Sugarman case, if an applicant sits quietly when there's potential objection and doesn't raise it and make an issue out of it, they lose that on appeal. So what we're asking here, counsel, is are you waiving his statement as a potential issue on appeal?
We are.
Okay, that works. And as I said, I think everyone who I had a conversation with has a point of view that has merit. So I think this is the best solution we have under the circumstance, and I recommend we proceed, and everyone should acknowledge the zoning board's decision is what it is.
All right, very good. Thank you all involved for your cooperation and your patience in dealing with this issue. And so let's move along. Counselor, floor is
Certainly.
yours.
So thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have with us this evening a number of witnesses. We have Glenn Haydu from Minot and Wasco, who previously testified regarding sustainability and solar issues. We'd like to bring him up first to continue testimony, as we were asked by Mr. Gilmer, really to take a look at and see what we could come up with to resolve some of the concerns expressed by the board, as well as you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
We also have with us tonight Stuart Johnson, our architect from Minot and Wasco, who also would like to respond and give some further information in terms of requests and questions that were raised by the board at the last hearing. We have Kevin Webb with us tonight from Langen Engineering, our site civil engineer, who will seek to have qualified as an expert in site civil engineering to present that testimony as part of the application. We also have Carl Pay, our traffic expert, as well as a parking consultant from Langen Engineering, who can speak to traffic, and Mr. Penke, along with Kristen Sokich from Pro Park America, who will also seek to have qualified as an expert, can also speak to some of the parking issues in the application, should we get that far in the presentation. So with that being said, I'd ask Mr. Haydu to come up, who I believe is still under oath, but we can have him re-sworn, I guess, depending on Mr. Galvin's pleasure.
Just a momentary procedure. Counselor, just for the record, I had left at midway of the last hearing on this application. I was not feeling well, but I did watch the remaining hearing that evening on videotape.
I don't believe we're going to vote on this case tonight.
Yes, I just
so
wanted that. I just wanted that said for the record, so there was no confusion on that.
We'll get you a certification.
I'll get a certification.
Absolutely. I just wanted to put that into the record as well. Thank you.
Did you use it to go to sleep with?
Can you spell your name again, please?
It's Haydu, Haydu.
You've been previously sworn. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening. Our design team took the comments of the board from last time related to the amount of solar provided on the roof, and we've come tonight to provide more specific information and also on the purchase of renewable energy credits. So I have 3 exhibits for tonight. The first, as you can see up here, is an updated roof plan. This was submitted to the board members, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And then I have 2 other quick exhibits that just run through some calculations and show a little bit more about the renewable energy credits. So for me, it should just be the 3 exhibits for tonight.
So, and with that, I think we would mark this as October 7th PowerPoint on sustainability. As I think we're up to A33.
I've actually pre-marked some of the...
Oh, okay. All right, so then we're now, yeah, so
Why don't
where are we at?
I marked the revised sheets A03, A07, and A8.01 from Minot and Wasco dated September 27th, 2019 as A32.
That's this plan.
Okay.
I've the Valley and Bloom parking deck volume and usage report by Pro Park is A33. And then the planning report from my department dated October 1st. I believe you received that. That's A34. A35 is the report from Barton Ross dated October 1st. And A36 is the report from Jerry Giosa dated October 4th. So we're up to A37.
And Janice, just a matter of housekeeping, and it may just be that my notes were wrong. We had 2 PowerPoints last time. I had marked as A31 and 32.
Well, I only received 1 PowerPoint.
So maybe, or maybe it's my mistake.
I think it was only one.
So maybe it's only one. Maybe
And that's
I wrote it twice.
A31.
Okay,
Yeah.
easy. All right, so we're up to A30.
37.
Oh,
So
this would be A38.
No, this is
This is 8:37.
8:37. And is this a PowerPoint, or is it just slides?
This is just a PDF presentation.
Okay.
I just have the 3 new slides for tonight, and then I have, in this PDF, I brought my exhibits from last time, just in case there were questions.
And your new analysis, right?
That's correct.
And you said a copy of that on my computer, on the laptop?
Stuart, did you copy it over? Yes, he did.
Okay, thank you.
Housekeeping good?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So our key takeaway from our discussion last time here before the board was to provide as much solar panels on the roof as possible that could be mounted low to the roof. We provided some exhibits and some photographs of using structure to put the solar panels elevated in the air about 8 or 10 feet, and I think it was a consensus among the group that that wasn't an aesthetic solution that everyone would be happy with. So how did we achieve that? First, we had some housekeeping to do, so Mr. Johnson updated the roof plan to pull all of the condensing units within that 10-foot setback. You might have remembered, but there were a few little small areas where the condensing units were kind of creeping outside of that 10-foot setback. So the first thing we need to do is correct that. So that's reflected in this drawing. The second is we had a requirement for 25% of the roof to be a green roof. We've maintained that same 25% in this here. The biggest sort of visual change of what we've done is we've reduced the size of the rooftop amenity. We believe that's an important feature for the tenants of the building, but we did reduce that by about 50%. It went from an area of 3,162 to 1,819 square feet. And obviously, that just created more surface area for us to be able to put solar panels.
Can you give me those numbers one more time?
Sure. It's 3,162 square feet was the prior submission, and it's 1,819 in the current proposal. So we've now kind of established the boundaries. We have the area for the green roof. We have some requirements for mechanical equipment. We have some plumbing vents that come up through the roof. They have to be within that 10-foot setback. So we were able to achieve 25% of the roof as solar. So 4,417 square feet. In this plan, depicted in blue, would be solar panels installed low to the roof. So that the new numbers would be 25% green roof, 25% solar installed low on the roof, and 10% as a rooftop amenity.
You said that was 4,700?
4,417 square feet. It is noted on the drawing as well. So now we've come to 25% of the roof we feel is the maximum that we could install as low on the roof as possible. So now, how do we go about determining what the numbers are for sort of the solar power? So 4,417 square feet is our working number. We work with a solar consultant who recommends using about 30 to 35 square feet per panel. The reason you have that sort of range is you can't put the panels too close to each other because they'll shade. One panel could shade the next panel. You see in the photograph there, the panels are always slightly spaced. We also have some room for serviceability, and then also just the configuration of how things work out. So we take the roof and we divide that. We get 145 solar panels is our estimate of what we can get on this roof. And that's about 30 square feet per panel, or on the more aggressive side of that range of what we can do. The panel we're proposing is a 325 watt maximum power generation panel. So now we've got the math to go ahead and run the formula to determine what these solar panels will generate. Using the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, it's a website, it's run by the government. You go in there, you put in your solar panel, you put in your zip code, and it runs it through a formula determining like the number of sunny days and days for rain and clouds, and tells you how much energy you can generate from those panels. So at the end of the day, using those formulas, we get 49,665 kilowatt hours. I know we're not here for math, but this leads into we still only have 25% of the roof as solar. So to make up that deficit, we're proposing to purchase renewable energy credits instead of for the entire 50%, just the equal amount to what we can produce on site.
Can I just ask you a question about the formula?
Yes.
Does that formula take into account that the rooftop is kind of shady if you have a big hotel next to it and the big Valley and Bloom behind it?
It does. Our orientation is south and west this way, so there's almost no shading. We ran 3D models to show how much shading was produced by the adjacent buildings and provided that to the solar consultant. When we presented renewable energy credits, I think there was some concern of how does that contribute to this area. So we've looked into it, and we're served by what's called the PGM interconnectivity part of the grid. And that's a 13-state area that includes New Jersey as well as Jersey Central Power and Light. So we agreed to purchase the renewable energy credits from that local provider. So I think, that was a concern. Of course, we can't get all of the solar on the roof here, but purchasing the RECs locally will help contribute to the growth of renewables in the area.
And could you go back to the previous slide just
Sure.
quickly? Right. Yeah, so there's no period of time assigned at this point, like 20 years, 30 years.
Oh, I'm sorry. So for the purchasing of the RECs, again, I gave testimony last time that a solar panel has about a 20-year life. So we are proposing, again, to purchase 20 years worth of renewables. So 1 year is $49,665. We'll buy 20 years of that on day one.
And how effective are solar panels after 20 years?
Well, they generally have a failure of decreasing efficiency of about 1% to 2% per year. But
Right.
ultimately, when you get to the end of the 20 years, things like the inverters and other pieces of the hardware have really gone beyond their useful life. So it's not like day 20, it ends. Some people drive their car for 5 years, 10 years, et cetera. But 20 years is the estimated useful life.
Right, because I was just trying to understand if it is, 60% effective, if you do have a bit of a long tail of, potential use, even from solar panels that are still on the roof beyond 20
Sure.
years.
So there's
And
two
how
other
that-
key.
how you may have
Yeah,
accounted
there's
for that.
two other things that factor into that. Most renewable programs, like Green Globe's the one we're proposing, suggest doing a 40% offset for 3 years, and that's how they award points. So if you do a 40% purchase of RECs for 3 years of your energy use, you get points in that program. So we're greatly exceeding. It's not like we're doubling it or tripling it. We're going to 20 years at 100% offset. So we think that's pretty substantial. Also, that 49,665 is in year one. So we're purchasing it based on the highest percentage of production out of those panels. So we're actually, if you were to do the math and with that decreasing percentage every year, we would probably be buying closer to 25 years. But to keep the math
Yeah.
simple, I'm just using year one
Oh,
performance.
yeah, I was thinking of the decreasing curve and then basically the area above that then applied beyond 20 years.
Yeah, so I could have done 49,665 in year one and
Right,
then
right,
47, but to just keep the math simple, none of us are engineers or mathematicians. We're using year one as the basis to establish our 20-year purchase.
At what point are you required to replace the solar panel?
There's no requirement in the redevelopment plan to replace the solar panels. It's just a day one requirement in the redevelopment plan.
But
So-
if you
But did they-
switched from solar panels, you would have, yeah, sorry.
No, that's where I was going with it. At the end of that time, are you saying that the obligation to provide solar energy no longer exists?
That's my understanding, the way the redevelopment plan is written. I think as well, I mentioned last time that who knows what 20 years of technology is. I sure hope we're not using the same type of solar panels in 20 years. We may have very different systems that can produce renewable energy and things like that. So we're trying to meet the obligation in day one, and I think we're exceeding that, with, as I mentioned, through the renewable energy credits and so forth. But the redevelopment plan just states to buy or put solar panels on 50% of the roof. It doesn't
Well,
say for
but
the
I
life
mean-
of the building
Right.
or
Well, the
anything like
redevelopment
that.
plan requires other amenities, other items, but they don't expire. There's no expiration
Right,
date on the
that's where I was going.
requirements in a redevelopment
Those
plan.
panels may last 50 years.
Well,
I
but-
can't say the average life is about
Just like a
20
furnace, you
years.
replace it with another vehicle another panels or more modern version of it to get more efficiency.
And I think if the solar panels are producing energy and providing a resource to the building, that the developer will, continue to service them. I just don't think there's an obligation to do it.
I should think we'll
but-
have a council then too, and we can, at that point, decide what we would
But I
replace
agree
it
with you.
with.
If you have
Right.
a roof that needs to be replaced, you're going to replace the roof.
Right, that's what I'm getting at.
Again, we don't know what sort of Energy's doing in 20 years. But we will, as required, provide solar panels for 25% of the roof. That's
Have
the
have you
proposal.
considered requiring the required solar panels on top of the garage next door?
No.
Couldn't that work? They were originally designed to have solar panels.
I am not familiar with that project.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, we took away the comments were to really evaluate this, do our best. We thought that the solution of providing 50% of the solar up high, which is the only practical way to get 50% of solar on this building, by doing a balance of the 25% green roof, the 25% solar panels, and the 25% renewable energy credits. In addition, we're purchasing those credits from the local energy grid as well.
And just to understand, so you said to meet the requirement of 25% solar panels on the roof when you initially introduced them, where is that requirement stipulated, or what did you mean by that?
Well, the redevelopment plan under section 4.6.3 requires 50% of the roof to be solar panels.
Right. Okay.
So
maybe I had misheard.
we can't get 50% with our area with the requirements we need for mechanical systems and plumbing and things like that. We can do 25%.
So if you had no amenity area, you could not fit.
No, we
a
could add
single-
another 10%, which is about 1,800 square feet, which is about 10%. So that would take us from 25% to 35%.
But that
Quick math.
that really is where the discussion ended at the last meeting, was coming back with a proposal that noted the maximum number of solar panels after the equipment is put on the roof, with no consideration of the amenity space. The amenity space would come after the solar panels.
I mean, my walk away from the meeting was we were proposing to do no solar, and that the alternative was to do solar high, and we feel that coming in with 25%, and also including the recommended roof, it's recommended, it's not required in the amenity plan, is a good balance.
So I wouldn't put a
I mean,
recommendation.
is 35% better than 25% and no roof amenity for the residents? I mean, it's a good amenity for residents.
Well,
They're
don't they
using
have-
these, and
Don't they have the roof amenity at the second level?
they do. It's not as ideal this, again, because of that sun exposure.
And why would you think that's a nice roof amenity, being that it's relatively small and surrounded by solar panels and mechanical equipment?
We thought it was better before at 3,000 square
I
feet.
know,
We're just
but-
trying to balance the needs. But having a space where you can go outside in the sun is an amenity. It doesn't have a view of Manhattan or anything like that. But
Right.
these are popular things, and they're occurring in most projects that we do nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, the building is kind of opposite a park, green space
Sure.
with the school, but,
We don't doubt that the rooftop amenity is a benefit to the individuals there and folks that may visit. We simply were trying to get clarity about what that maximum number was, and we said, maybe it's 35, maybe it's 40, we didn't really know, but we were assured that we would get the number that is, maximizing solar panels. And then, of course, we could have a discussion about, okay, maybe you do scale that back to some, range in between the two.
I mean, currently, the rooftop amenity is 1,819 square feet. So some of it is outside of the 10-foot setback, though. So if you're willing to accept that outside the setback, then we could talk about that. But it's 1,819 square feet. So if you just want to add that, we can do the math right now to the 4,417 and do the percentage. I can do that. But it's about 35%. I misunderstood if you said come back and just present us the maximum understanding. I think the argument was, show us what you think is a compelling opportunity for this project. So that's 6,236 square feet. %.
Yep, and that takes into account any other setbacks, configurations. It really would be about 35%, is that right?
That's correct.
Got it, great, thank you.
So Mr. Hayden, so the concept, I think, is, so how much was the roof amenity reduced? It was about 50% from
It's
what was previously
about
proposed?
50%. That's
So that, I mean, I think that's the, and I'm making a little bit of a legal argument, but I think that what we've been struggling with a little bit with Section 4.6.3 of the redevelopment plan is that there is a requirement for 50% of the total roof surface, which gives no concept or understanding with respect to roof surface also includes mechanical equipment and other things. So we've got that number, and then by contrast, we also have a recommendation, which is a common sound planning recommendation, that there be rooftop amenity space. So I think the thought process, and just to reiterate, I think what was just said, is, we've compared to what we presented the last time, we reduced the roof amenity space by 50%, but still trying to achieve the recommendation of the plan in accordance with sound planning, in accordance with basically infill development of multifamily buildings in suburban environments like Montclair. I mean, they have rooftop amenity space. It's sort of a thing in the marketplace. And what we're losing is, instead of having 35%, which still doesn't get to 50%, we're at 25%, and then of course, we have the purchase plan to sort of try to, offset that concern as testimony in support of the variance. So obviously, we can answer more questions, but that was at least the thing.
Yeah, the rationale of the current plan, I think, is sound, and it does make sense. It was just the maximum number that we did need.
Got it.
I want to alert the board, in Hoboken, where we do green roofs, what we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years is compelling a deed restriction that the green roof be maintained for the life of the building. One of the things that you worry about when you have things on the roof is that it's here today, it's a new building, it looks good, but then over time, no one waters the plants, or the plant's not kept up. So what we've been doing is recording the green plan and the actual plantings in case they ever have to be replaced in the future. It's a deed restriction. The other thing that I'm struggling with here, not to create, you're putting in, you're giving us a time limit that is not in the, it's not in documents. It's not in the law that there would be a limit to the solar panels. It's a feature, it's a function of the building. So I think that's up to the board to decide if you want to give it a life, or if you want them to be replaced for future. I mean, I agree. I hope that there's all kinds of new technology and soon, but they could make an application to the board for relief for new technology, but, I don't know.
It's pretty unusual
I don't think
that...
you have to go
sorry.
with the fact that they're saying 20 years and that's it.
I think it's, I could be misspeaking, and I haven't spoken specifically to the developer about but it's pretty unusual that after 20 years, I put the same product on the building. If I replace the windows, I put something new in. If I replace the roof, it's generally a new type of material. So again, I don't know what the technology be. We might have a solar panel that's 1/10 the size that does the same amount of power.
I have no
So
opinion, I'm advising the board.
Sure.
But it seems to me that we're putting something up there now, and if it expires, you're not really talking about what the replacement would be. It could be that they become towel hangers or something for the amenity space.
it's just hard to predict.
I mean, again, I can't, I'm thinking to myself in the sense of, in terms of ordinary replacement of things in the useful life of a building, while, technically speaking, I guess it doesn't literally say you must replace the solar panels, and I don't mean this, I don't think it's the intention of the developer to say they're just waiting for these things to fail so they can just let them sit there and have no productive utility. What I would imagine is that if you have a solar array on a roof that's not doing anything, either you're going to want to provide upgraded technology, which I imagine you're coming back in front of the board because you would have to, or alternatively, you're proposing to do something else, which, again, you'd have to come back in front of the board because you would have to. It's hard for me to imagine that, and obviously, I don't disagree with the advice you just gave, Mr. Galvin. It's just, I guess where it's an unusual, I've actually not faced this one before, too, where we're talking about sort of the technology like this.
Reduce the lifetime of the, of what we're getting.
Yeah, particularly with technology, which is, as we're all recognizing,
With
is,
zoning and planning, we're planning for the lifetime of the building.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, I was trying to come up with a time frame of what would be appropriate to purchase renewable energy credits. So that was the reason I had.
It's totally up to the board, guys,
yeah,
not
sure.
me, but I just want to make sure they're aware of that, I think.
Well, I was.
Yeah, it wasn't the intention to say that, like you said, the 20 years and we're done. I just needed to create some sort of baseline. Green Globes, again, is 3 years. We're well beyond that, so 20 years was a reasonable time.
Could you do it for the life of the building?
I would think that the solar panels that are there now, that are being produced now, are probably better than the ones that were produced 20 years ago, but we still require solar panels. Hopefully, they're just better quality, but do a better job. So
Yeah,
I don't see it as a sunset.
why don't we work with the board to come up with some language of what's appropriate for the extended life of these panels after
Yeah.
day one? I'm not sure the best way to sort of address it here. We're not opposed to it, I don't think. It's just coming up with the best method.
Yeah, if the board's amenable, we're inclined to agree with Mr. Haydu. Perhaps we'll come back with language. And Ms. Talley, I think I understand that the board has a solar consultant who still needs to weigh in on this anyway.
Yes, he still
so
hasn't submitted his report, so I anticipate that in the next week or so.
We can perhaps have a conversation with him as well
Right.
as the interim, so.
Yeah, he only works when it's sunny.
And I think it'd be good for the consultant to see this presentation with the calculations so
Right.
that he can
Yeah, he has the
incorporate that.
previous one, and I'll forward this to him, plus the YouTube video.
Exactly.
If there's a challenge with it, it would be good to understand. But is it possible also just to get the calculation all the way out to what you would be purchasing, just so we see the end result? 20, I think it's just multiplying that by 20, right?
It's 20 times.
Whatever, which again, I know is quite simple, but just to see the final answer.
49,000.
Right. Right.
I've already, yes, we've already been reaching out to people that we purchase renewable energy credits from to make sure they're available and things like that.
And just for the expert to advise us as well, just so he sees kind of the end result, and then, yeah, this is the number we're working with.
And Mr. Haydu, your calculation includes the amount of solar panels that are encroaching in that 10-foot boundary as well, what's shown on A07?
There is a very small percentage of solar panels that we put on the hotel side away from the street. It's about 2% of the total area of the roof. It does include that.
Okay. And can I ask you, since we're on A07, and this may not be your purview, but the black dots that are aligning the walkway, what are those?
I think they're intended to be exhaust fans for the bathroom. I think they're intended to be the exhaust fans for the bathroom. And they are challenging to offset them, which is why we try to come up with a realistic area, because code doesn't require, with fire-rated shafts and things like that through the building, it is challenging to move them too far horizontally one way or the other. So the square boxes are the condensing units for each of the units, and then the black circles are the exhaust fans for the bathrooms. And again, we've tried to create, through Mr. Johnson's testimony, a clean facade. So all of the ventilation is through the roof. We don't have any PTAC grills or things like that for the HVAC system. So it's kind of a give and take. If we vented horizontally through the building, you'd end up with louvers on the sidewall, but it'd free up roof area. But we clearly think this is the better direction aesthetically.
And Mr. Haydu, there was a calculation question a moment ago, so I will come back with the exact number, but it's over 1 million kilowatt, right, for 20 years at the...
It's just 20
Approximately.
times that number.
Yeah,
I think it's just under, but yeah.
Just under.
Yeah.
To protect people from falling?
I think there's a parapet on the building, but I don't believe there's any specific fall protection. I'm sure Mr. Johnson can talk about that.
Okay.
As long as the building code only requires fall protection if you have serviceable equipment within 10 feet of the roof edge, so it's not a building code requirement. With the green roof, you probably want to have at least some minimal protection there, because they do have to do some weeding and things like that to maintain these roofs properly.
Well, and I assume that people are going to want to spend some time and, if there is grass there, I don't know what you're planning on planting, but if there's grass, I would imagine people will recreate in that area?
Well, I think at this point, they're proposed as sedums.
That's-
because
yeah,
we have a
okay.
wood frame building, so we're limited. We can't do an extensive type of roof system, so these are more of like the trays, so it's more of a visual than a walking
Gotcha.
on. Yeah.
Okay,
It's just, we're limited in a wood frame building, how much weight you can add to the building.
sure,
So it's more of a visual here.
understood.
Anything further, council?
No, thank you.
Anything further from the board? Questions?
I was just going to say this is rather complicated, so thank you for working through all this.
Sure, I didn't mean to do the math, but there were some specific questions about that and so forth.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. And even what to do at 20 years, I think even mentally I'm kind of struggling with. So, yeah, it'd be good to see what's possible.
Sure. And did you mention in your previous testimony the typical degradation year over year of panels?
I was told through Apollo Solar to assume about 1 or 2% per year.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, there's so many different qualities of materials and things like that, so he's been giving me sort of recommendations of kind of mid-range products at about 1 to 2% per year.
Sure. And it also comes down to how well you maintain them as well.
Of course.
Right? If you're not cleaning them off, then...
And that's part of
good luck.
the 30 to 35 square foot that I mentioned, is to give a little bit of room to get in there, because these do need to be cleaned. Yeah.
I have maybe a silly question. Do solar panels make any noise?
I'm not aware that the solar panel itself
And any of
generates
the-
any noise. There are...
Anything arising from having solar panels there?
No, there is an inverter, and again, I'm not an engineer, but it converts the AC to DC, but it doesn't make any audible noise beyond, a foot or two from my experience. Yeah.
Any questions from the public of this witness concerning his testimony? All right, Counselor?
Thank you. So,
Do you have a question, ma'am?
Yes, I have a concern.
Well, you have a question of the witness concerning his testimony. If you do, please step up to the mic.
And if not, there'll be an opportunity at the end of all their witnesses to provide any comment you have on the application as a whole, including concerns. Okay.
Okay. All right, Counselor?
great. So our next witness is Glenn, I'm sorry, Stuart Johnson, also from Minot and Wasco, our architect.
Previously sworn? Yes, I was. State your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Sure. Stuart Johnson, last name J-H-N-S-O.
You may proceed.
Thank you.
Great. So, Janice, we have another PowerPoint which has some changes from what was submitted to the board.
Okay.
I guess we'd seek to mark that as A38?
8:38.
Yeah.
Great.
Sure.
So it's great to be back. There were several comments that we heard from board members as well as members of the public regarding the building, the ground floor plan, as well as some questions regarding the facade materials being proposed. There was an ask to provide rear building elevations, and there were also some questions regarding the rooftop. So we have several new exhibits and revised exhibits to share with the board and the public this evening. Yep. Okay. So we have several new exhibits responding to some of the comments we heard from the board and the public. So the first exhibit here is sheet A03, which is the ground floor plan being proposed. There was a concern and a comment regarding move-in and move-in operations for the residential component of the multifamily building.
Sir, do you have this as a handout as well?
I don't, this slide has not changed or has not been revised from what was submitted to the township.
Okay, because, it's pretty hard to see if there are any changes on other slides from that up there. If this is the same,
So this is the same exhibit.
Yeah, I'm
This
just
is
saying
dated
for your-
September
for
27th.
your
This
other
was submitted.
modifications.
Okay.
No problem.
Sure, thanks. So again, the ground floor plan, previous testimony was provided that a load-in and drop-off, pull-off area was being created off of Central Verde Drive. There was some concern about the move-in operation to the multifamily building. We provided a direct connection to the building here through the refuse and loading service area. We provided a 6.5-foot wide stair with a set of double doors that are 6.5 feet clear in width. And again, I provided testimony previously that move-in operations would be a scheduled and coordinated service with building management. There would only be one move-in occurring at any given time, and it's during given hours. So again, this would provide future residents or potential residents who are living here, who might be receiving furniture or moving into the community to provide direct access from the Central Verde drop-off area through the garage, and then provide access to the double-sided elevator for move-in and access to the vertical levels of the building. Are there any questions regarding that particular exhibit?
I'm sorry, but where is the double-sided elevator?
So there's a double-sided elevator being provided here. It's highlighted in yellow. It's intended that that elevator would be controlled by building management. So the rear-facing door that accesses the parking garage would only be accessible upon a building management keying it so that residents can move in, or building maintenance would be able to take recyclables down from the refuse room to the garage.
So the furniture truck is going to stop in the loading zone, say you're moving household, and it's going to bring all the furniture in, and it's going to go through the garage and all the way where the cars are coming in and out by the driveway to get into that elevator. That's the plan?
So that's the plan, and again, this is a multifamily building. These types of operations are done all the time in this township, as well as surrounding municipalities and townships across the state. Again, that would be a scheduled and coordinated
Right.
service with building management. It's a private residential garage.
It wouldn't be a better idea just to have them go in the garage entrance and stop right by the elevator and have them just go in, rather than all the way around? You know, if you're scheduling a move.
So if the board was amenable to it, we certainly don't see a concern here that, a U-Haul or moving truck could be staging from here, and you could certainly come directly in through the garage.
No, I mean pull up the truck right by the elevator.
So there's not...
There's not enough room?
You would be blocking the entrance here, and there's not enough clear height there at the garage entry to bring a full-size vehicle internal
That's
to that
the
parking
reason,
garage.
yeah.
And again, that would block traffic.
Well, it would block one lane, I
Sure.
guess. It's a two-way.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
but I mean,
it'd be a better operation to have that occurring through the new location that we're providing through that private garage. And again, there would only be one move-in occurring at any given time. Typically, they're on Saturdays, and it's a scheduled service with building management.
Mr. Johnson, I think my understanding is that assuming maybe a turnover of 30% or less a year, we'd be talking about maybe like 12 moves a year. Is that your understanding, or?
Yeah, for a building of this size, that's correct. For 46 residential apartment units and a turnover of approximately 30%, maybe there are 12 move-ins occurring in one given year.
It's a nice plan. It's a nice plan, but what's going to stop people from pulling in that curb cut out on Orange Road? That happens to be a whole lot closer to that door.
Again, building management's going to control that operation, right? So
How are they going to control it?
So move-ins are a scheduled service. You have to apply through the leasing and management office to move into the building, to gain access to the building, to unlock the elevator and provide access. So building management has eyes, there's security cameras on the building. If a resident's trying or attempting to move into the building on an unscheduled or coordinated day, I think that they would be shut down.
So building management is going to go out, check the location of the van, moving truck, make sure it's in the proper spot. That's what you're saying?
I think the more important part of that is the access control on the back door of the elevator.
Joe, you need a
Right.
mic.
Right. I understand that.
I should have.
I understand that building management is going to have to unlock the
That doesn't
door,
move.
but my question was with respect to the parking. And unlocking the door is a different function than making sure that the moving van is in the spot where it's projected to be according to this plan.
And Mr. Johnson, I think maybe to speak to the chairman's concern, I mean, I would imagine, and curious as to your opinion on this, the the concept of having a moving van in the loading zone along Orange Road, which is sort of directly in front of the restaurant or the the retail use that's there, as well as the building lobby. I think that's probably not something that a quality building such as this that's seeking to attract the type of tenants that are going to be living in this building is going to want to see happening. I mean, is that a fair assessment in terms of why building management wouldn't be looking the other way while that's taking place?
Correct. I think that would be less desirable for the marketability of the retail, and also that takes away from the public plaza that we're trying to create, some of the design standards that are in the redevelopment plan. But it's building management leases and the leasing offices and their management practices. It's their best interest to obviously monitor this. Again, this is typical operation for a multifamily building.
Thank you, Counselor. No, I understand typical operation. The problem is that we see all sorts of violations of those typical operations on a daily basis in the town, and I'm just wondering,
Right.
And because the loading zone is so far away, if there wasn't a better way to do this, because I do think that I'm not sure, what is the clearance going into the garage?
So clearance going into the garage is approximately 8.5 feet at the entry door.
That's interesting, because how big is a fire truck? If there was like a fire in the back there, how would a fire truck get in?
I'm not sure the nature of your question. The back, I don't know where you're referring to, but I don't know the exact clearance of the various apparatus that the township has. Certainly, I wouldn't think that first responders would try to bring a fire truck internal to the building. The garage level is fully sprinklered. There are also standpipes internal to the parking garage and all the egress stairs. So in the event that there were
A car fire. So there's a car fire.
Sure.
How does
So in the
somebody-
event, first responders would have access to the building through a knockbox at the garage door, as well as the other egress doors to the building. They could connect their hoses to the standpipes in the building and fight a fire, or certainly respond to other first responders, I guess responding to other emergencies that might occur within that parking garage level.
Mr. Johnson, would it be possible to put an elevator closer to where the loading area is?
It would be problematic to locate the elevator cores, typically like to be next to one another. So for construction efficiency, and again, that where we have our retail located, that would
like
be
it's
sort of
more than that.
problematic in the
That's the,
construction efficiency of
what
the
is it?
design.
It's the Cornish amenity.
I mean, even if it was flipped over to the other side of the other side of the lobby area, instead of being on the edge, being closer to the loading area, it could cut that distance in half.
It's plausible. I mean, again, I'm personally less concerned with that distance. This is not a great distance for for multifamily buildings. And downtown residential apartment buildings, it's common that dollies are used, and professional moving companies scout these buildings out and understand them and know how to move residents in and out of these buildings.
But dollies have a hard time with stairs.
Right.
So my guess is that they're going to park in the driveway of the building to the north and
again,
just
we'd
swing it
follow that,
right around.
And this would be, this would be scheduled with building management.
I understand.
And we would utilize stainless steel folding ramps that, moving companies would be able then to wheel objects and boxes up those stairs.
So that will go over the stairs?
It would go over the stairs, as a temporary move-in ramp surface.
And where do Amazon trucks come in and deliver their packages? Is that in the front there?
So Amazon trucks or mail, Uber drop-off could certainly utilize the drop-off in front of the building. That's intended for short-term drop-off, a convenience drop-off and delivery. If it's a larger load, or a USPS was coming and delivering mail to the whole building, they certainly might use the loading zone here if they intend to be in the building for a longer period of time.
And contractors or landscapers, they would use that loading zone?
They would use, they would utilize the loading zone. And again, the building management would control that, right? So if someone was coming to service the live roof, they would utilize the loading zone or park internally to the garage.
There's a concierge desk in the front, or no?
There's not a concierge desk here. So this would be, there would be off-site management that would be located in town or the surrounding area, but the building would be monitored 24/7.
So, yeah, but I think what I'm alluding to is the concerns that my colleagues have expressed in, trucks usage, blocking the streets, without, a doorman, or door person.
Yeah. So as to help
Super.
Mr. Johnson, he can certainly answer the question. I was just going to indicate, in light of some of the building operation management questions that are coming up, we'll have somebody from ownership testify. We can have it now or at the conclusion of Mr. Johnson's testimony, which I may be able to answer some of these things to the extent that Mr. Johnson, may not have all of the information the board's looking for.
So you want to come back to this, in other words?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or, well, I mean, we can do it tonight.
Yeah, I'm saying
Yeah.
another witness.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Mr. Johnson, there will be a valet there at
There
all
will
times.
be a valet attendant internal to the parking garage, yes.
Right.
Is that 24 hours, valet?
Again, that testimony will be provided later, but,
Oh.
so no.
Yeah, actually, we'll get to that actually a little further.
Defer that testimony.
We'll defer on that answer. That it's not correct in terms of the valet.
So that concludes, my testimony, I guess, on the move-in operations for the building, the revised exhibit, sheet A3 that we provided. With that, I'll move on to the exterior building elevations. First, this is sheet A07, which was previously referenced by my colleague, Mr. Haydu. We did make one minor modification. There was a spelling error on this sheet, but additionally, there was one of the residential condensing units located in this corner that overlapped that 10-foot setback. So we did modify that exhibit to show compliance, that all the rooftop mechanicals would be set back from the roof edge by approximately 10 feet. So that's the rooftop exhibit.
I just have a question. The
Sure.
amenity court on the right there?
The
No, on the right, on the lower amenity place. That, yeah. Are those, is that some kind of greenery that goes around the edge?
It is. So
That is, yeah.
right. So that's illustrative, but that's intended to be a raised planter that's at the edge of the parapet there to soften the edge of the raised pedestal courtyard area to that of the adjacent parapet. It also keeps residents back from that edge and acts as a buffer.
And how far is that from the next building, the edge of that? There's no space, is there, much space, not much space between the, I guess it's Valley and Bloom that's back there.
There's not. The line here that zigzags
Right.
and is a partially dashed line represents the property line, the lot
Right.
line. So it's a atypical line there. Our ground floor level more or less follows that property line. We have a party wall condition that is offset from the property line by approximately 18 inches or so to provide for construction tolerance, but it's a typical downtown infill condition there. Where the ground floor is built up to the adjacent wall of the adjacent structure, which doesn't have any windows either, and is also a party wall condition. And then at the upper levels of the residential, as I previously provided testimony, the residential building where we have windows and we have, the apartment units for the residents steps back from that property line to provide light and air.
Where is the typical screening detail at roof? Where will that be installed?
So we have a typical screening detail that's located here, but that typical screening detail then would be installed. Right now, we are schematically showing two RTU units, which are rooftop units, which are used to heat and cool the common corridors, the residential amenity, as well as the residential lobby for the building. Those are larger units that are approximately 96 inches in height. So typically they sit on top of a curb that's 18 inches to 24 inches high, and then the actual unit can be 5 to 6 feet in height. So we would use that screening detail around that unit. We haven't engineered the building yet, so we don't know the exact make and model of the equipment being used. But again, this is typical of multifamily design and other buildings that we have designed and work with MEP engineers on. Additionally, a similar screening detail would be used for the 42-inch high condensing units that are set back 10 feet from the roof edge. So we would propose that we would provide a continuous aluminum louver detail to screen those from the public view at the streetscape. I've also provided testimony previously that if you were to look at a site section or a streetscape section, a pedestrian standing at the streetscape would not perceive the height of a 42-inch the height of a 42-inch condensing unit that's set plus or minus 10 feet back from a roof edge that additionally has a parapet that's 12 to 18 to 48 inches in height.
And what about a 11-foot high wall? Would they be able to see that?
It depends where that 11-foot high wall was. I mean, it depends where you're
it's
running a
around-
section through.
Well, it's around the, I mean, I think you just testified it's around the RTU.
So the RTU unit is approximately 96 inches in height, so it's about 8 feet. So the screening wall would be about 8 feet, and again, that would wrap it and close that. My personal architectural opinion is as we go to screen these, we actually draw more attention to them. The applicant's happy to provide the screening. We're showing a typical detail as such, and again, we plan to screen those. Again, it could be a condition similar to other things that upon conditioning of the building or CO of the building, there's an inspection certainly to see that the rooftop units are adequately, adequately screened. Right, so I said so it's on top of a 18 to 24-inch base, and then it itself, the unit is 5 to 6 feet in height, right? So the previous or the original testimony was that's about 96 inches in height from the roof deck itself.
I'm questioning because what I see here in the typical detail is, I think I'm reading it as 11 feet high. That's where I'm
Sure.
getting that number from.
Sure. So the 11 feet high, again, that's a typical detail, so that might have been a typical dimension. We don't propose that the screening itself would be 11 feet high. The screening would be the height of any mechanical equipment being proposed on that roof. So again, we are permitted mechanical equipment that's taller as long as it's set back 10 feet from the roof edge. I'm providing testimony this evening. We expect that the equipment will be plus or minus 96 inches in height. Screening then would be the same.
So that would or would not be viewable from the streetscape.
I don't believe it would be perceived from the public right away on Orange Road or Central Verde.
What about the houses across the street that face it?
I don't believe that it would either. I mean, again, the houses across the street are approximately 2.5 stories, 35 feet measured to the ridge of the roof. So I don't believe that from a second story window you would necessarily perceive that, but we would have to analyze that. Again, we are permitted to have mechanical equipment as long as it is set back 10 feet from the roof edge. It's not considered part of the building height. We're providing testimony this evening that we plan to screen that to mitigate any negative impacts that mechanical equipment might provide.
Don't you screen it just for noise purposes?
It can be screened for sound attenuation as well.
Yeah.
Again, for a multifamily building of this type, we're not typically concerned about the noise that the condenser units or an RTU unit would generate. There are no directly adjacent single-family neighbors next to our building. I mean, there are some across the way.
Well, I
But
was
if you
thinking
look-
about the amenity space. What's the point?
So-
You're going to have people using your
Right.
open
So again,
space.
as my colleague, Mr. Haydu, previously provided testimony, providing outdoor amenity space on a roof space is a good sustainable feature. I think actually in the redevelopment plan, there's language that talks about the rooftop sustainable elements. Providing an outdoor space that's well lit, that provides fresh air and sun, is a highly amenitized and desirable feature for residents of the building, but also is good planning practice. I don't believe, in my opinion, that any sound that the mechanical units would generate would discourage residents from utilizing that space. I think that space would be highly utilized by the residents of this community.
Genesis, we're still on the roof. Have we changed any regulations regarding the rooftop equipment usage or placement?
Well, we have in our zoning ordinance, but not in the redevelopment plan. In fact, the zoning ordinance hasn't been adopted yet.
That's what I wanted to know.
Second reading next Tuesday.
So that doesn't apply to this?
It does not apply to this. It's not been adopted.
Hold on. It's a time of application. Okay.
I have a question about the placement of the rooftop units are in the back, in the two legs. But the highest point of the parapet is over in the southwest corner.
Correct.
Wouldn't that be the best place to put them for screening?
So, in my opinion, having them further back, actually, I would be more concerned with the view from Orange Road because the right-of-way there is wider than that of Central Verde. So I think stepping them back and having them further back here makes more sense when you look at a building section in terms of, I guess, a setback. The other thing is that typically these RTU units are located at the ends of the corridors. And typically you have returns and fresh air intakes at these ends of the residential corridors.
Yeah,
So when we look at
I just was thinking, you've got this architectural detail that's not doing anything.
for the screening here.
Yeah.
Again, that's intended to be a typical detail because we haven't engineered the building. We don't know the final height of that RTU unit. It could be 100 inches, it could be 80 inches. Once we develop the construction documents, if we were to receive a favorable recommendation from this board, we would certainly make it a condition that, upon CO, that there could be an inspection and that we would provide the adequate screening for these equipment.
Yeah, putting the...
No, and you've got a big parapet on the southwest corner.
Right.
And it's not doing anything.
Right, you're saying that could be the screening.
That could be the screening.
Yeah.
So we've actually reduced the parapet here to be a 4-foot-high parapet. So the parapet at the corner here, we have a revised exhibit this evening that what shows that parapet is approximately 48 inches in height.
Okay.
And then the general parapet here is about 24 inches in height. And then there's certain areas where we're creating architectural interest and variation, and that parapet's about 3 feet 8 inches in height. So in general, there's a 24 to 48 inch parapet that runs around that building.
Okay.
Are there any further questions of the witness so far?
Okay. So with that, that leads us to sheet A08. Sheet A08 is the proposed west-facing and south elevation, the Orange Road elevation and the Centro Verde elevation. There was comment or concern at the last hearing regarding the proposed heights of the parapets. We've since reduced the height of the parapet, specifically at the corner tower element here, at the intersection of Orange Road and Centro Verde. So that represents a parapet height of approximately 48 inches higher than that of the roof deck. The building height as proposed is 51 feet, measured from the mean natural elevation around the building to the roof deck. And again, we're proposing a 48-inch parapet. So even if the parapet were to be included in the building height, it's less than that of the permitted building height, which is 55 feet. Again, measured from the mean natural elevation around the building to that of the roof deck. So we have revised drawing number 1 and drawing number 2 on sheet A08 to show the new parapet heights.
So we didn't receive the revised A08, just the
Correct. This is a new
808.1.
exhibit. This is a new exhibit that's dated October 7th. We have a hard copy here that will mark, I guess, as an exhibit.
You don't have anything to pass around that we can see?
We have a full-size hard copy exhibit. I'd be happy to pass that around to the board
You can't
members.
come to a hearing and present an exhibit for the first time and not either hand it to us beforehand or not have copies of the hearing that we can at least look at. It's just not right.
So what we need to do is pass it out right now. Let's take a look at it. And you may have to continue to stick around until we have a chance to figure out what it's saying. Because looking at it on the screen for us is insufficient. I can't really see most of what's up there.
Okay.
And, need to evaluate it based on, in comparison to what was submitted previously, so.
This is labeled wrong.
This will be 839.
Mark just for the whole.
You're saying the second floor
So
is
sheet
here,
808.
and then I've got 3 feet down, third floor, foot 8. I think that,
51 feet, not 52 feet.
but this can't be the roof, because that would be the roof.
That would be the parapet height.
That's the
fine.
parapet height. The fourth floor, you're not going to have the floor.
You can mark the whole set. That represents what I'm presenting here, Janice. Yeah. That's why we brought the hard copy.
I think that this scale is all wrong. My question is this.
You've communicated to applicants, they have to come in with images either beforehand or handouts.
10 days before the meeting.
Yeah.
That's what the rule is, 10 days before the meeting, so we
So there's only one copy?
So, yeah, with apologies to the board, there was an oversight in terms of, it was a change that wasn't made on the set that was submitted to the board. It's a reduction in the height of the parapet.
All right, well-
That's all I can say.
All right, so what we're going to need to do then is move on. We'll have
Certainly.
to, we'll have to continue to take a look at this. Do you have any questions?
I have one question, and I think that your scale appears mislabeled. Yeah, because where you're showing the roof is the same height as the parapet, and then you go down 3 feet. Fourth floor, you go down 1.8 feet. Third floor, I think that your floor levels are mislabeled.
No, I believe what you're referenced there, we're showing the top of plate and then the underside of the structure. So the 1'8" represents, that's the floor structure.
Okay.
And then the 3 feet at the top, that represents the roof truss as well as the insulation and the membrane for that assembly.
But if you draw that straight across, it looks like the roof is allowing for no parapet on the side of the building.
I think Mr. Rooney's referring to the top section. If you were to be able to zoom in on that where it says roof and follow that line across horizontally, it looks like it's right at the parapet height.
I don't believe that was the intended That's not my reading when I look at that drawing. The roof datum line represents the top of structure at the roof. And then we're showing that the revised parapet at the corner of the building is approximately 48 inches in height. And the 3 feet
right?
below that,
Am I wrong? Okay. Okay. I believe you.
And did the building height change from 52 to 51?
so the building height label was revised from 52 to 51. So 51 is the correct height that matches what's on the civil engineering drawing. And again, building height's being measured from the mean natural elevation around the building to the height of the roof deck. Again, we're permitted 55 feet in this zone per the redevelopment plan.
Is there an image of the building in context to the surrounding buildings?
There's not a revised exhibit that shows it in context. We have the previous exhibit that we proposed or that we presented at the September 9th hearing that I could share with you.
At some point, can you represent that again?
Revision.
Sure. Would the board like to see that now, or you're suggesting that we resubmit that as a your?
Resubmit it. Resubmit it as a revision.
Yeah, we'll resubmit as a revision.
Okay.
Just so you don't overlook it, we were talking about the rooftop, you didn't know what the height of certain things from the roof that have to be.
So I provided testimony that the rooftop equipment will be approximately 96 inches in height for the RTU units, and that the condensing units are approximately 42 inches in height. We haven't engineered the building yet, so we don't know the final make and model of the equipment being proposed there. But
But we need to know how it's going to be, we need to make sure that we don't see it.
Yeah. We shouldn't have to use our imagination.
Okay.
Do you understand? I
I
just
do.
want to
I
make sure
mean,
I'm clear what
again,
we're
we-
doing.
What we're saying is they don't know what kind of equipment they're going to use in yet, so it might be varying in height.
Right, right.
Right.
But we had a problem with another case not that long ago where we didn't have the initial to the side of the top of the building.
The hotel.
With that.
Building
The
right next
hotel.
door.
Right. Again, I mean, I can't speak to that. That was a different, a different applicant. I wasn't the architect of record, but the mechanical equipment associated with the hotel is vastly different than that for the multifamily building.
I think-
It changes in scale.
I think for the,
size.
I think for the
yeah.
mechanical equipment, you should show us the worst-case scenario.
So right, so that, I just want to
So-
make sure, so there's a typical screening detail that's showing at, how low is it, 11?
11 feet.
11 feet, so
Right.
right, so the point being, it's probably less than that in.
Max height, it's less than 11 feet. We're stating on the drawings that the RTU units are plus or minus 96 inches, which is.
So your drawings, when you draw the building, it should reflect those
That-
units.
that's-
If you're saying it at 11 feet,
That's
that's
what
the
I-
worst case, then you need to show those
No,
units at 11 feet.
thank you, Mr.
We
That's
can
I just-
revise the screening detail to show that it's 96 inches in height, which is what the max height of the RTU units or the rooftop mechanical equipment that we're proposing on this roof. That's fine.
And ref-
Submit a revised exhibit.
And reflect that on the elevation.
Yeah.
That's- Okay. Understood. Yeah.
Right. Understood.
And is there an offset from the screening units to the RTU? And is that included in here?
A offset, you're saying a distance, a separation distance?
Yeah, I mean,
There would naturally-
typically-
There would naturally be a separation distance between, the equipment itself and the screening.
So so the outline that we see there of the RTU, is that actually the outline of the screening and the RTU would be smaller than that? Because typically the RTUs have panels you open up to
Right,
service.
right.
So you need clearance of what, 2 to 3 feet roughly?
Probably
on all
less than
sides?
that. I mean, in certain areas, for an access panel, you might need a little bit of clearance. But, what I would suggest, if we're submitting a revised exhibit that's going to show the revised screening height, then we can diagram in, the area of the screening around the equipment.
Okay, and you'll be able to then, once you make that revision, you'll be able to show us if that is viewable from, what angles, down Central Verde Drive, or just where it might be visible, or the fact that it's not?
Well, we can provide a few cross-sections that would show the height of the building and show the height of the equipment. Again, I don't believe that we can model every scenario or angle at every altitude, but we can provide a section that would show, a pedestrian at grade and show the sight line to the top of the building to show that that equipment as set back would not be visible from the public right away. Yes.
Thank you.
Anything further from you?
Yes.
Well, we'll move to the, I think
Yeah,
you're.
the next. So the next exhibit was A08.2, and this is an exhibit that shows the percentage of exterior building materials being proposed on the exterior of the building.
Was this also revised?
This is a new exhibit which reflects the elevation that you just saw. So
That's the one that we received.
No, we haven't been provided this until tonight, right?
you've not been.
Well, I mean,
Right.
we've only seen it on the screen.
I chose to create a graphic exhibit that would help to.
So anything that if you're just giving that tonight, skip this testimony.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, we'll skip to what we previously
Right.
submitted.
Give us a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
And then you can testify about it next time, once we, have knowledge of what we're looking at.
Certainly. Yeah, jump to that.
So lastly, we have sheet A08.1. These are the rear building elevations. Skip this, and I guess if we're coming back. So drawing number 1 on sheet A08.1 is the north-facing elevation. This faces Greenfield Avenue. And drawing number 2 is the east-facing rear elevation. So these are the proposed rear elevations of the building. We were asked to provide these to the board. You can see the exterior building materials being proposed are masonry brick veneer on the base of the building. You can see drawing number 1, this is Orange Road.
Hold on, this is a new exhibit? This is something new?
So this is a new exhibit. There was an exhibit in your document, but again, we can skip this and come back if the board.
Can't see a thing. Can't tell a thing from what.
This one we received, though, right?
We did. Again, this exhibit has the reduced height on the parapet on the corner. We're going to submit.
So this has been modified since the one we
It's been modified
received.
with the reduced height of the parapets on the corner of the building, but the percentage of exterior building materials on the rear-facing facade and what you see have not been modified from what we submitted to the township. So again, rear-facing elevations, building materials being proposed here are vertical fiber cement siding panels with reveal trim at the upper residential floors of the building, masonry brick veneer, and manufactured cast stone at the lower levels of the building. Along the Orange Road facade,
Hold on, please. So you've decided to stay with the fiber cement panels?
So again, I guess if I can get there in my testimony, but so we heard comments from the board, and we took an opportunity to reflect upon the proposed exterior building materials for the building. We had some concern. There was a recommendation to use stucco in place of fiber cement. We had some concern with providing a. Sorry.
Maybe we should take a break now? My fault, I didn't tell.
Yeah. Why don't we go ahead and take a break?
Okay, that's fine.
And 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Catch it while it's hot.
We're back on the record.
Okay.
All right.
Sure. So I believe there's a question regarding the proposed materials on the exterior facade of the building, specifically in question the vertical fiber cement smooth siding panels. There was a recommendation previously to look at providing a stucco exterior finish in exchange for the fiber cement being proposed on the building. We took a look at this. Architecturally, we have some concern about providing a stucco exterior system on a wood frame building. Concern about long-term maintenance of that. Additionally, we've reached out to the consulting board architect, Barton Ross, and had a conversation regarding this. He expressed some similar concerns regarding the adequacy of stucco on the exterior of this building, provided a recommendation for the use of fiber cement vertical siding panels, which was also noted in his review letter. We also had the opportunity to reread the redevelopment plan and read the permitted exterior building materials. And in section 4.3.4, specifically 4.3.4.1, the appropriate building materials, it goes on to recommend masonry brick veneer. It also recommends smooth vertical fiber cement siding panels on the exterior of the building. There was a recommendation from Barton Ross, the consulting architect for the township, that we not use a batten system, which we are not proposing here. So again, this is smooth vertical siding panel, which would have an aluminum revealed channel. It would be a smooth finish with a matte finish.
You said 4.3.1?
4.3.4.1, appropriate materials. So again, our proposed concept here on the front elevation, the west-facing elevation that fronts on Orange Road, has approximately 11% vertical fiber cement siding panel with reveal trim being proposed at the fourth story of the building, and then coming down 2 floors here to help break up and create a base middle top reading to that building. The Centra Verde Drive, again, has masonry brick veneer being used at the base of the building, coming up multiple stories on the corner. That has approximately 19% of vertical fiber cement siding panels being proposed, predominantly at the upper levels of the building. You can see 2 different shades of fiber cement vertical siding panel being used. And then we also provided a exhibit of the rear-facing elevation. So the ground floor facades would be masonry brick veneer, turning the corner from the public street-facing facades. And then the upper levels of the residential building, which are stepped back from the property line, would then be vertical fiber cement siding panel. And this is comparable to other multifamily apartment buildings that can be found within the township. There's the adjacent multifamily building next to us, which has a similar condition, masonry and brick veneer on the base of the building, with fiber cement panels being used on the upper portion of the building. Even those are detailed differently. There are other multifamily projects either being constructed as well as have been built within the township that also utilize this building material. It's a quality building material that provides for long-term maintenance on that facade. It's a rain screen product, and it works well construction-wise and maintenance for the building. Again, that exterior facade material is a recommended material in your redevelopment plan and also complies with the recommendations of your consulting architect.
So all in all, how many different facade materials are there? I see like 4 or 5 shades of different things.
Sure.
What's the total?
So we're using masonry brick veneer. We're using manufactured cast stone veneer. So those are both masonry systems. We're using vertical fiber cement siding panel, and we have 2 different colors that we're using on the facade for accent. And we're also using composite metal panel. The last accent material being used on the building is a composite wood cladding material that's being used, or composite wood paneling material being used on the other sides of the canopy at the retail facade on the corner of the building. Other than that, we're utilizing aluminum storefront windows at the ground floor of the building. We're also utilizing aluminum clad wood windows at the residential levels of the building, which is compliant with the recommendation by the consulting architect for the township.
So, I counted 5 different materials in your answer to Council Schlager. Reading 4.3.4.1, it says no more than 3 different primary materials should be used on building facades.
There you go, yep.
Within the primary materials, variations in colors, textures, and pattern may be employed.
Right.
Break up the bulk, but the plan calls for no more than 3 primary materials.
Right, so 3 primary, I think primary is the key word there. So again, if we take a look at the west-facing elevation here, we're using 32% masonry veneer. Masonry veneer being the full bed depth masonry brick, as well as the manufactured cast stone being used at the base of the building. The fiber cement siding material.
What's the percentage of cast stone?
I don't have the specific percentage of the cast stone here this evening. We'll be coming back to the board. We can provide that.
Okay.
But the cast stone
As
is
a
being
trim? Using it as trim?
No, we're using manufactured cast stone as face material here at the ground floor of the building.
Okay. The base? 'Cause again, I can't see from the picture, so I'm blind here.
Okay.
I don't have a picture in front of me.
Sure. The percentage of the building materials and the articulation of the facades match that was previously submitted to the township. The only revision that we spoke about earlier was the height of that cornice, which we'll come back to the board on. But again, the submitted facade materials that was previously submitted represents that, which I'm providing testimony to this evening. So again, in my architectural opinion, I think we are providing 3 primary exterior facade materials of masonry brick veneer, fiber cement siding panel, and composite metal panel being used as accent. The other building materials that are being used are not primary materials, and they are, all probably less than 10%.
Can I ask you a question? Do the fiber cement panels ever need to be painted, or do they fade, or what
No,
happens
so
over time?
The fiber cement panels would be factory primed and finished, and they'd be installed.
I want to stay with this. You said that composite metal panels are a primary material. Is that what you just said? Was that your testimony?
We're using composite metal panels on approximately 17% of the Orange Road facing elevation.
Okay, so now it says preferred primary materials, since we're talking about the primary materials. It said preferred primary materials for all building facades are stone, masonry, brick, wood, stucco. So a composite metal panel is not a primary.
So I think that sentence maybe was cut short, but it reads that the preferred primary materials for all building facades are stone, masonry, brick, wood, stucco. Then it says, except EIFS is not allowed. Then the sentence continues and says, hardy panels or similar fiber cement siding panel, trespa, ventilated facade systems, median panels, and similar high-pressure compact laminate cladding panels, precast, cast stone, manufactured stone, masonry and glass, as well as cast iron, steel, aluminum, and other types of metal are all preferred primary materials for building facades within this zone or within this redevelopment plan.
Not so sure about that. Then now the question is, another sentence issue. Are the primary materials stone, masonry, brick, wood, stucco, with EIFS not allowed, and the sentence ends there? Or does that sentence continue?
Mr. Schwartz, I'm just asking. Sorry. Mr. Schwartz, I'm just asking, there is a colon.
Yes,
and then there's a series of semicolons after.
I see what the issue is.
Right, so yeah, that's why, I'm not sure where why you're suggesting the sentence ends after where it says EIFS not allowed, because the semicolons continue then throughout the rest of the section.
Because it says a trespa ventilated facade system. So it seems a bit of a conflict. In other words, it's unlikely, based on your theory of how that sentence would read, that a high-pressure compact laminate or cladding panels would be included as a primary material. So I'm just not clear about this. And the issue is whether or not the building facade actually adheres to the 4.2 neighborhood character issues that we talked about last time in terms of intent for both massing that harmonizes with the character of the Montclair Center and the Montclair Historic District. So we seem to have, what I'm suggesting, and I think the chair alluded to this, is that the use of these materials, which reflect some of the Valley and Bloom materials, may not harmonize with the older buildings in the downtown center, which appeared to be the intent of the redevelopment plan language. And so we have a potential inherent conflict in the way this building looks to other buildings in the area, or the intent to have this building harmonize better with other buildings in the area. And that's not clear from this particular sentence whether or not the primary materials are the first few in that sentence, ending at "if is allowed," or it continues onward. So I think I'd like some clarification on that, and maybe we need to talk to the township's redevelopment consultant, Ira Smith, to clarify that. And since you're coming back there, I see no issue why we wouldn't just continue this conversation at the next meeting.
Well, respectfully, I'm not sure what Ira Smith is going to add to the discussion
Or
regarding...
potentially Janice...
Well, just let me finish. The sentence begins with the word preferred and ends with the word metal where the period is. There's no period in the interim between the word preferred and the word metal. So I don't know how you can arbitrarily draw a distinction between because there's a semicolon after the parenthetical, except EFIS is not allowed, and suggest that there's an ambiguity that the sentence somehow ends there. And I certainly don't know how Ira Smith would add to that grammatical construction.
I think in my reading it's basically one sentence listing all of the permitted primary building materials, which includes Metion panels and similar high-pressure compact laminate and cladding panels, and it goes on to list all the other items. I think the key issue here is the plan does limit it to 3, and I think it appears to be more than 3 primary materials, and that might be what the issue is.
Well, I think we need to see the breakdown of the materials. It sounds like the overall design of the facade, aside from the parapet reduction, or the corner reduction, however you want to refer to it, on the south side of the building, that was the only change in terms of the facade of the building on the Orange Road and the Valley and Bloom side. So I guess the other issues about whether or not how the building addressed the context of the other buildings in Montclair, that hasn't been addressed at all by these revisions. But again, once we get the revised drawings, we'll have a better idea of where we sit with that.
Well, would you like to see, I know quite often we have samples are brought to the hearing. Do you have a sample board?
So we have a digital sample board that was presented at the last hearing that I can show you, but we'll be back in front of this board, so we can certainly bring a tangible material sample board.
Yeah, because pictures...
And again, the additional materials that were being proposed, the composite wood cladding, or obviously storefront glazing, glass, these are accent materials that are typically found on buildings of these use, and again, are compliant with the recommended materials per the township's consulting architect. But we will bring a physical sample board to the next hearing.
Okay, what else do you have for us?
No further questions of Mr. Johnson at this time.
Does the board have any further questions of Mr. Johnson?
I had one. Why did you reduce the height of that parapet in the southwest corner?
So I believe there was a comment or concern from one of the board members here, or several board members at the last hearing regarding the height of the parapets. again, we'll be back in front of the board, so we'll submit a revised exhibit, and we can discuss that, I guess, at the next hearing.
I thought the redevelopment plan kind of allowed some, or maybe even
It does. I mean,
desired
I
some
believe the redevelopment
feature in
plan
the
does
corner.
encourage, right, a varied cornice line and articulation. And, again, building heights being measured to that of the roof deck. So again, it does encourage and actually, encourages that on corners you provide kind of a tower or turret element to create architectural interest and variety. Again, I think perhaps that was a mistake on my part. I thought we were responding to a comment from the board, but again, allow us to submit a revised, exhibit and discuss that at the next hearing.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been a comment. I just, looking at it tonight, it seems like it
And
takes
again,
away
I
from.
think there was another comment, if we had seen it before and after, perhaps the earlier version or a hybrid would be more desirable and actually would be more attractive.
Well, part of the issue is that it doesn't look like anything else in town.
Well, I think that was the chair's questions
It doesn't.
from last time,
It doesn't.
last meeting.
Right. I mean, there's plenty of buildings in town that have corner features, and it didn't seek to mimic any of that. It created something totally different. So I think that was more the issue than the height.
I think that would be helpful, too, for the next meeting, is to understand, where in town.
Well, I mean, they kind of told us where in town it's coming from, and it's coming from the buildings next door, if I understood your testimony last. You attempted to make inclusionary remarks about other buildings in town, which I really failed to see the substantial connections. I saw the main connections to the new buildings that were built next door. So if you want to bring in examples that might clarify that, that would help, but I failed to see that from the last testimony.
Understood, Mr. Chairman, and we'll seek to address that when we come back.
Okay. Are there any questions from the public of this witness concerning his testimony? Please step forward. And Counselor, maybe you might want to share your mic.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, this is good. My name is Deirdre Malloy. I am a member of the co-chair of the Montclair Housing Commission and a member of the Environmental Commission, and I know how to read site plans and et cetera, construction documents. And so my question is, can you go back to the Central Verde Drive slide where you have the elevator in the northern part of it, right there. My first question is, what is the square footage of the largest apartment?
The largest apartment being proposed in the building is approximately north of 1,050 square feet.
So that would be 3 bedrooms, maybe?
Well, that would
Two
be
bedrooms?
that would be a 2-bedroom.
bathrooms?
There'd be a 2-bedroom market rate unit.
Okay. And there are 46 units in this building? Yeah, okay. That's fine. Thank you. I also want to thank you for your testimony. I appreciate it. And then there's 46 units altogether. So my next question is, from the Central Verde Drive through the garage, what's the square footage or the amount of feet there to get from? Do you know how many feet that is?
That's approximately 120 feet once you enter the parking garage to that move-in elevator. Again, we can provide that specific distance at the next hearing, but it's, plus or minus 120 feet.
All right. And there's only the one elevator, correct?
There are 2 elevators being proposed for the building.
Where is the second one on the?
1, 2.
Right, okay. And the one to the furthest to the right is going to be the move-in, move-out elevator, correct? With the double doors, or is it one elevator?
The elevator on the left side here, that is a double-sided elevator, is intended to be used for move-in operations. Again, that would be scheduled with building management.
Correct. Is building management on-site or off-site? Because you mentioned on-site property management and then off-site.
So we're actually going to address that by way of another witness, so
Okay.
we'll certainly have the opportunity to ask, and we know the question in advance now, obviously.
Okay, no problem. The reason I ask, and I've managed luxury buildings and condo co-ops and move-ins and all that kind of thing, and I am a CPM candidate with the Institute of Real Estate Management, but I wanted to point out those issues because while there may be only approximately 12 move-ins in a year, you're going to have to occupy the building at the onset. So how is the owner and/or management company going to stagger these move-ins? Because I would imagine, unless you schedule them, you know, on the weekends or only on the weekends, because in the evening, you know, that might be an issue, you're going to have a bottleneck of people waiting to move. So how will you or the owner/management company propose to schedule that at the onset? Because you've got several moving trucks coming. How many trucks can fit here? One at a time?
So we understand the question. I think Mr. Johnson's probably the wrong person to answer this, so we'll defer to
I apologize
our
for
other
that.
witness. Oh, no, it's okay.
And I'm not trying to create any, you know, inconvenience, but I think the board asked a really good question. And these are some things that need to be considered very seriously. You got traffic and some other things. I'm going to change my subject to something you probably can speak to. The solar panels. Council raised a very good question about replacement. Are you willing to put in place a plan for replacement for this building as technology changes over the years?
I think as we testified, we're going to actually try and evaluate how to respond, speak to the solar consultant that the board has retained in terms of how to address that issue. So I would say everything's on the table in terms of how to address.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Tanya Richards. I am the owner at 18 Orange Road, which is across the street from the hotel. We've lived for the last 3 years under massive construction, and there's things that we could never imagine to ask at the time that the MC Hotel was being constructed, and so now I'm making it my point of duty to be here because it really was a nightmare. I've had busted tires from the streets not being cleaned well enough, all of that. So I just want to understand a little bit more about it. So for this proposed construction, can you just let us know about the parking spaces? It's 46 units. How many parking spaces? Because already we are dying on Orange Road with parking. We can't even access the streets in front of our houses, and we don't have driveways. We have those row houses type that don't have driveways. So we have all these folks coming into town, and we like it, it's good, but we are dying because there's no parking for us.
So I'm sorry to do this because it is a very good question, and I think it's going to be answered, but it's a different witness. We're going to have parking testimony.
Okay, so that's going to be addressed tonight?
I don't think at the hour we're going to get to it tonight, but it will be addressed before the conclusion of the proceedings.
Okay, and then I had another question for this board. So I feel like at some point there's going to be some kind of construction fatigue, and I want to make sure that the fatigue carries on for the residents, for people who own homes that may need to improve their homes, and you guys are not going to deny variances because clearly we're allowing variances by having some of this kind of construction. So I just want to make sure that is there going to be any kind of issues when homeowners come to you guys and say, hey, I want to do a 2-family house in my 1-family resident if it's R2 zoned. I don't want your fatigue to run out yet. So just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, 14
14 Orange Road, and
What is your name again?
My name is Nicole Millette.
I couldn't hear.
Nicole Millette at
Okay.
14 Orange Road. I
Could
think
you
you
spell your
got it.
last name?
It's M as in Mary, Ollette.
Thank you.
As she spoke before, when they start this, we ensued chemicals because there was a gas station there that I couldn't breathe in my home. And there were also gas, what do you call these? It releases gas. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out when I'm smelling gas in my house that is a phenomenal amount of gas leak that came from that pocket of gas from the gas station where the Montclair Hotel was being built. So we were exposed to a level of chemicals that we had to inhale in our home, not to mention my house needs to be cleaned because of all the dust and dirt. My window to my car was smashed by falling debris, and I had to keep my windows closed for 3 years. The only time I can open my window was at night. So this is a big concern for us as homeowners that, you know, I know this, I'm in agreement with the development of Montclair, you know, and I agree with it. But we also need to take into consideration small people like us. You know, you have Montclair Hotel, there's no parking restrictions on their side, but yet on our side we have parking restrictions. We have people unloading their luggage in front of our house when they have valet parking. So I know that you said this will be held at the next meeting about parking. You have 47 units. How many units are you going to provide? Is it going to be inside that building, or is it going to be using the parking garage next door? Because the parking garage next door, as this moment as I speak says, it's full. And that's before this building. So that's what my concern is.
When you say it's full, what do you mean?
It says it's full, no more parking available.
There's a sign?
Yes, ma'am. It says full to a capacity.
And you mean it stays that way? It doesn't?
It during, when weekends, you know, because we have a lot of activities going on, wonderful activities in Montclair that are going on. When this is full, and this hasn't even been built yet.
Right.
Mhm.
What is going to happen with the parking?
Mhm.
Right.
You know, and as she said, with the moving, you know, how many trucks can actually fit in front of here? If you take one car, if you look at the space between the little curve.
No, we get it. That's why we asked. That's why we asked the question.
And the children who are going to walk past, there's still schools there. And you got garages that are flying out into the street where it's still considered a sidewalk there also. So that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah.
So I think you guys really did a wonderful job with the questions that you asked, and I respect it tremendously. I also respect that you guys want to improve our area, but to please take into consideration us as homeowners. And when you guys start digging that gas and hit that pocket, understand that there are children a few hundred feet down on both sides, and their families that are inhaling these chemicals. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's an interesting question that she's raised about cleanup of the site, being that it was a gas station. For ours, it's a gas station. And is there any environmental issues that have come up that have you investigated?
Well, again, my understanding and is that the we're the contract purchaser, but the prior owner has cleaned the site up pursuant to the cleanup standards, I presume facilitated under the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. Ultimately, the tanks on the site will be removed, but again, it's all under formal cleanup approval procedure.
Do you get a certification from the state or the government that everything's
So, yeah, so
Clear?
what I'll hedge on is, you're catching me a little off guard. I'm not prepared to fully testify as to that issue,
Okay.
but we can certainly address it to everybody's satisfaction. I
Well,
think.
tanks are still in the ground, right?
Yeah, that's my
Yeah,
understanding.
so-
Well, do they test for
the state is
leakage
gonna
if
have to-
anything's
Yeah.
leaked?
He's going to have to see.
Believe me,
you know, over
Yeah.
DEP will require those
Okay.
tests and that cleanup. They're very thorough,
Yeah.
in my experience.
Okay.
When does that happen? When do they do that kind of review?
When do they do what?
Yeah,
When they-
you said DEP will require the cleanup, so when does that happen? Has
They
that
have to
review-
file
When they-
plans. This
When
is,
they
this
fi-
is with the owner. If they're going to clean it up, they have to file plans with DEP and have a licensed site remediation professional oversee and certify the cleanup.
Yeah,
And
they
that's-
have to remove those tanks
Okay.
before they can start any construction.
Okay, and then the EPA looks at this to make sure it's.
Yeah.
Just,
No,
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 just
EPA,
DEP.
it's DEP.
Just DEP.
But one of the things
state,
you got
not federal.
I'll just say, make a comment. The process works that we have to consider an application like this. We're not allowed to stop it for outside agency approvals. So if they need DEP approval for a brownfield, do you need a brownfield permit here?
I'm not certain. I don't think so, but I'll
you double
hedge.
check
But yeah,
that?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, have you guys taken control of the property or taken ownership of the property?
We have not taken ownership yet. The control question, I'm not entirely certain on, but let me come back, because I'm.
But all of this is subject to
Well,
those other regulations being met.
What I'm saying is,
Okay.
those are things that we're always concerned about. We want to make sure that the property is in the proper condition before people live in it and as part of the construction process. But there are things that we can do, this board can do, and there's some things that we have to leave to the professionals that are more
But I think
experienced.
we ask the question and we get on record what their answer is, especially in light of this woman coming up and
Yes,
saying that,
yes.
in the building of the hotel, there was a real problem. So I think we should proactively address that now.
Yes.
I just have something to say. There were no laws that were followed when they built that, okay? Because we had to call in the fire department, we had to go to the emergency room due to the chemicals that we were inhaling. Nothing was followed properly. They had to shut down their site several times due to the gas leak. Okay, so these were things that weren't taken into consideration, which were an error, but a really big one, when they built Montclair Hotel. So
Wasn't there leakage from an Exxon
yes, it was.
station there?
Yes, sir.
That came out in a DEP report, and then I think there was litigation as well. Mr. Stolar is familiar with this history, certainly could get into that. Is the expectation at this site, given that it's a garage as well, is there any environmental contamination issue known or expected here? I think that's what the...
Well, due to the fact that there's a gas station there,
Yes.
when they start digging, they're going to hit a pocket. Once they hit that pocket, it releases fumes that even the construction workers should not have inhaled. And it was so strong. And this severely affected us.
I understand.
And it affected the people around. And what they did was, what their solution was when I wasn't home, or they thought we weren't home, they snuck out truckloads of it. This is how this was handled. This was not handled legally in the proper manner. And this is what I'm hearing, what they're saying, what's been suggested, and what needs to be done. But when none of you guys are around, we're across the street. We're actually watching what's really happening. And what they did it that way to save a ton of money. You know, and I watched the trucks. I have pictures of it. The fire department man, he told me, they tried to say, oh, maybe you have a gas leak in my house. I said, no, it's from the gas release valve over there, and that's an awful lot when my window is cracked this much and my whole house smells like gas and I'm feeling sick. So they're going to hit a pocket. That's a gas station. It's going to hit a chemical pocket. What is going to happen when it hits that? Are we sneaking truckloads of dirt out that's contaminated, and they try to watch when we're home and when we're not home? We've had our water shut off, and I'm like, what's going on with the water? We come out our homes, our water's off. They didn't give us any type of heads up on this. I was on crutches. I had to literally walk on my crutches to get to the corner. Our streets were closed off consistently without even our knowledge. The site would start their construction. I think it was 7 a.m. They started it. It went from 7 a.m. to 6 a.m. to 5 a.m. and then almost to 4, to where I had to call Montclair Police and say, this is unacceptable. So we listened to noise. I mean, I'm talking intense noise. For 3 years, we endured this. So my concern is this going to be handled in a proper manner? And in an appropriate manner. I have cracked walls. They were dropping steel, boom, cracks all in my walls in my home that were not there. So I know this is a money-saving issue, but you guys have to take into consideration that we are still human beings that actually live across the street from where you're going to build it. I know there's a lot of money involved, but I'm asking for you guys to really take this into consideration, that there are people there are children in 2 schools who are going to inhale all those chemicals once you're hit that gas pipe. And how is it going to be handled?
How many houses are there across the street? I know the street well, but how many houses are there?
1,
There's more than
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 homes.
6?
6, 7. 7.
7?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
And in the case of, I just previously, I know this doesn't have a whole demolition plan attached, but photos of the homes taken before and after they begin construction, is there anything we can do around that? Or, I'm just trying to think of what we've done in other cases.
I think that really the issue is between the property owners and developers, and that there needs to be a conversation, and it needs to be worked out between them. It's beyond our jurisdiction,
right,
to deal with it. But certainly by way of this application, the residents across the street know who the developers are.
So I ended up having to reach out to Avison and Young. I believe they were the construction partner, about my 4 flat tires because they hadn't cleaned the streets. And it took me getting very aggressive and saying, I know people at the Times, do you want me to make an issue of it or not? And I said, I don't really want to waste my time writing to you guys. And then finally they reimbursed me for my 4 run flat tires on my BMW because of the nails. There were all nails in it. And I don't want to fight with developers, right? I don't have the time for that. I have a family to raise. I have a job to go to in the city. So
well, actually, you were fighting with the construction contractor.
Okay.
You really need to go to the developers who they work for.
Well, see, I spent all this time trying to research what's the chain. Right. These are the people that we're seeing. Oh, this guy's not on the job anymore. So we don't really want to do that. We're like the 7 houses that we've been fighting to. We've invested in this road for a long time.
No, we hear you, and I think we all appreciate the issue. But the problem that we have is that, as you can see from what you hear being advised to us this evening, yes, we're going to take care of this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that.
Right.
And after it leaves this forum, we don't have any, there's very little that we can do. Even when it's in this forum, unless it's related to something that deals with the municipal land use law, we don't really have jurisdiction. It's really the town and the construction officials and that kind of thing.
So maybe you guys could have part of it set up some kind of a fund for the inconveniences that we have, because we do. My house needs to be power washed for 3 years. It's disgusting, completely disgusting. So I think that we're coming here because we've lived this construction zone, and I can tell you that I can't live it again in this way. So we're hoping that the next round will be handled much better. Nicole really articulated very well all the stuff that we went through. I work in the city, I work long hours, so I don't get to enjoy as much. But it was a nuisance and it was a problem. So we're hoping that by being here and you guys kind of hearing what we're saying, that you'll take that into consideration. We appreciate the redevelopment, but we invested first. We've been here. We invested in that strip before anybody else thought it was this viable, read whatever zone, right? So, thank you.
Thank you. Now for the
Frank Rabacki, 398 Upper Mountain Avenue. I have 4 questions of the architect. In the previous, in the September 9th meeting, you spoke about the public plaza. And one of the things that I thought I heard you say was that as part of the public plaza, the developer would follow Montclair sidewalk regulations, ordinances, about 30 minutes in. You said you have a public plaza that was going to be exciting, it's going to have cafe, all kinds of stuff, it's connected to the deck, and then you said it's going to be connected, then it's going to be following Montclair ordinance, which struck me as a interesting comment. So I just want to confirm that was what the intent is. Because the reason why specifically is because I assume you're responsible for the patio area, that outside the cafe. You designed that?
This was, I just got a note from Ira. He said this.
Mr. Rabacki, I have a feeling the question may be appropriate to Mr. Johnson, but just to clarify, if you're asking about the actual engineering hardscape design, that would be the engineer, but I assume that's not really what you're asking.
I'm asking if the applicant is going to follow, has stipulated it's going to follow Montclair ordinance, sidewalk ordinance.
I don't believe that was my testimony. If the question specifically is in regard to cafe seasonal dining or outdoor seating outside the proposed restaurant, we had provided testimony that, yes, we would comply with township ordinance regarding outdoor seating for retail or commercial uses. Yes.
So my point being is that our ordinance, from a design point of view, where you're more than 15 feet, or where the sidewalk area is more than 15 feet in front of the building, you have to put a 6-foot passageway between the dining area and the facade of the building. You have it flipped. So you would have to change the design to comply. So that, do you understand what I'm saying?
Why don't you put up the drawing that shows that?
It's true, it's like in Church Street.
Here to here varies from 15.5 to 18 feet, the property line. This area, I assume, is where the outdoor dining area will be concentrated. I don't know what's there. Montclair ordinance says when you have dimensions of this type, over 15 feet, you need to move this out away from the building and insert a 6-foot passageway between the building and the dining area to be in compliance with the license. Do I need to repeat that?
If you want it on the record.
Okay. So, this material here, let me just call it cement. You have a patio within a plaza. This is, I understand from testimony, to be the outdoor seating, cafe, eating area, tables and chairs. So, according to the cafe, the sidewalk cafe license, because this distance between the facade of the building and the property line is more than 15 feet, this dining area, this eating area, has to be moved out so you can have a 6-foot passageway between the facade of the building and where the people are eating. Where you don't have, where it's less than 15 feet, then you can do the passageway between the curb and the dining area. Now, okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, we obviously intend to comply with the ordinance, and to the extent, obviously, that there's an illustrative coloration that doesn't reflect an accurate compliance with the ordinance, we intend to comply with the ordinance. So there'll be a 6-foot passageway.
Okay, so
yeah.
Okay. Second question, testimony was that this drop-off, pickup, Uber, Amazon is private? Is this for the building use, or is this public? Is this for our use? The general public? I thought it was general public.
It is for the general public. I mean, that's intended for a public, for public use, either, Uber or residents who might be dropping someone off there. So it's certainly, that area is not striped as a loading zone or fire zone. It is open to publics.
So I can just park there for as long as I want?
You can't. Again, previous testimony was provided, and we'll have separate testimony by the owner or the applicant regarding how management practice will occur for this building and how that will be monitored.
I thought the intent was short-term.
Now I'm confused again. So the management is going to manage the public property?
I think, look, so it's a public right-of-way, so obviously a guest or a resident of the MC residences could have an Uber drop them off there, as well as somebody who just says to the Uber driver, let me off here, they can drop off there, whether or not they're intending to access the building. I don't know about the hypothetical that I think you're proposing, which is could somebody use it as a parking space? I don't think that's a viable parking space, which is a township right-of-way enforcement issue. Certainly, we're not suggesting that we're going to be enforcing the township right-of-way.
So you're not asking for you're not asking for an easement from the town for that space?
No, I don't believe so, no.
The application, there's nothing in the application about an easement for that town space?
No.
For private use?
No.
Okay. And just so we're clear, Orange Road allows parking along its entire length currently, in front of your site. It's public parking now.
We'll obviously look at that. I don't know that Mr. Johnson's actually the correct
No,
witness.
you raised it, I was addressing you.
I should clarify, I'm speaking more hypothetical than I am with certainty of testimony.
Okay,
So,
back to Mr. Johnson, two other quick questions. One, stupid question, but does glass count, do windows count as a primary material on a building?
Glass is listed as a primary material, yes.
Okay, so the windows would count as a primary material?
It's listed as a primary,
Okay.
as a permitted primary material.
Okay. And then, could you put up the Orange Road facade? Yeah, this works. So my question is, in here, according to the diagram, there's some kind of utility space, and then there's space for the lobby, for the tenants, and then there's retail. Could you just tell me which parts of this are utility space, which one of these bays, or how many of these bays is utility space, and whether they use spandrel glass or some other translucent or not translucent material?
The first bay here is a transformer vault room that's located internal to the building. There's also an electrical switchgear room there. So again, that's mechanical space internal to the building. There would be a combination of mechanical louvers there. There would be some opaque glass that would be used for the access doors to that mechanical space so that it mimicked the adjacent storefront glazing being proposed on the exterior facade.
And it's just for that one bay?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Johnson, are you saying there's going to be louvers on the Orange Road facade?
There would be some ventilation louvers for that mechanical space, yes. But the design of those louvers would be designed and built into the storefront frame, so again, mimicking that of the design of the adjacent storefront windows.
So are those louvers shown on this elevation?
They are. Those louvers are being shown here in elevation. And again, those were submitted on the previous elevations, building elevations provided to the township and the board members. That has not changed.
Okay.
So just to clarify Mr. Rebecki's question. So the glass is considered a primary, whatever it was, material, yeah. So you have, so therefore you'd have like at least 5 primary materials, if not 6, in your drawings thus far?
So again, glass is a primary material, but
Yeah.
I would think that the interpretation here is that windows are a permitted material.
I don't know, it's just,
so-
since Mr. Schwartz brought that up, I just wanted to make sure we're all on board with how many primary materials there are.
Well, I have a question. Is there can you distinguish between window glass and glass as an architectural feature? Is there different kinds of glass?
There certainly are different types of glass. I mean, there's insulated glass that are found in windows. There's storefront glass that's found in storefront glazing. Again, the redevelopment plan, I think, encourages storefront glazing at the ground floor, and obviously, you typically have windows. Specifically, the redevelopment plan states that glass, simply glass, is a primary material.
My final question for this witness, Section 2.3.3 under design, could you give testimony how you believe this design reinforces the eclectic and historic sense of place in Montclair Center by requiring new buildings to harmonize with its scale and character?
Actually, Ed, I think, Mr. Chairman, you actually raised that this was an issue you'd like us to come back and address, I think, at least in part. I was going to suggest that we defer the answer to...
As I said, they testified to this at the... They testified, this witness testified to this at the last hearing, and I just didn't really get what they were trying to convey out of that, other than that it's mimicking the hotel.
And Valley of Bloom.
And there were references, I do remember that there were references that were made to other buildings in town, but I don't recall getting specific answers to which buildings they were talking about. So that's what they were going to provide more detail as to those buildings that they referenced and meeting that standard that you just quoted.
Well, I remember him referring to the hotel in Valley and Bloom.
Right.
That was my recollection of the testimony at the time.
And as to the louvers, if you could give us some detail on what those louvers look like, because I'm just looking at the revision to the plans that you submitted, the one copy of, and what's drawn on here. I don't know if there are other details, but what's drawn on here for the windows in question for those storage rooms, or the utility rooms rather, and also for the garage, is there like a metal grate that's supposed to be coming down over the door of the garage? Because that's what looks like is drawn in. I can't really distinguish that louvers are in the area of the facade. So if you could, make sure that we have the detail on those so that we understand exactly what we're supposed to be looking at for these two particular details.
We can certainly provide that. So in the revised elevations, we'll provide a detail for the mechanical louvers. We did previously provide a detail of the roll-up garage door. And again, that's in compliance with a recommendation per Barton Ross. But again, we could provide further testimony.
Where was that detail provided?
That was in the PowerPoint presentation that was given at the September 9th Planning Board hearing. But again, allow us to elaborate on that. We'll provide, we'll represent that detail along with the detail for the mechanical louvers.
It'd probably be better presented as a sheet in
Was that PowerPoint ever given to us in the?
I uploaded it.
It's
It was never handed out.
But we never got those
But I
sheets.
uploaded it to the website.
Right.
We'll put it on a sheet.
So, yeah.
Are there any other questions from the public of this witness? Counselor, you have a number of witnesses left. Anybody we can get done in 10 minutes?
Yes, we can have Mr. Stolar be sworn in, and he can speak to building management issues, as I know a couple of questions have come up this evening. Hopefully that's 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Kindly state your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Brian Stolar, S-T-O-L-A-R.
When it gets this late, I try to go louder so it finds the energy.
Go louder, okay. I just want to speak to some of the management issues, because I really think that those of us who do the management really need to give those answers. And I don't think our professionals are really keyed in on all that.
Is the green light on, Mr. Stolar?
The green light is on.
Good, thank you.
Want me to hold the other one? Is it-
No, I just want to make sure. I wasn't hearing it overhead, but as long as it's on.
It's a long day of, I don't know if I'm the only one who gets October allergies, but by the time I get to the end of the day, there's not much voice left. I do just want to speak very quickly to the issues that were raised about the cleanup, because I don't want to just have it go ignored. There was a cleanup done at the Ferrara site, not by us, by them a long time ago to remove the tanks that were there, and they were replaced. They're empty. All we have to do is remove the empty tanks that are there. I can't really speak, and I feel bad to hear everything that we heard. I can't really speak to everything that Exxon did in their cleanup, which they told us was an extraordinary amount of money. I'm not going to speak to it because I don't have the exact number, but it was a very considerable sum that they spent, and exactly what went on and how that happened, I can't really speak to, but it's nothing like this. That was, I think, about a 20 or 25 foot deep excavation to remove all the soil, which is what they did, because they had many tanks that were leaking for many years. And unfortunately, because it's Exxon, how do I say this? They're bigger than the New Jersey government, so that cleanup went on. That cleanup got delayed for many years. So it's not the same thing here. But I did want to just speak to some of the management issues because I think it's important. Buildings of this size typically do not have a concierge. Sienna has 101 units that has one. Even at that size, it's questionable because it's a condominium. It does have it. Pretty much every building, I'm not really sure, but I'm pretty sure the Montclairian, Vestry, others don't have an on-site concierge. Even at Valley and Bloom, only one building has a concierge. The other building has its own access, automated access that surveillance cameras and fobs for residents. The leasing process is going to be 5, 6, 7 units a month. There'll be only one move-in at any given time. No one will be allowed access. They don't run amok in our building, and we will control that, and we're right here in Montclair. So nobody will be permitted to park wherever they want or move in whenever they want. And to the point about the initial move-in, that's true. It's 100% true, but it'll be 1 a week, maybe 2 a week in the beginning, and then it will be 12, 13, 14 over a year, both move in and out. So to be clear, it's not just one move, right? Somebody's leaving and somebody's coming. What we're finding more and more in these apartments is you don't see big moving vans. You see U-Haul trucks, and more the amount of personal items that are coming in are reducing. At 35% turnover, maximum would be about 14 for the whole year. That distance in the garage, I would say from 35 years of doing this, is probably about average. Some are shorter, some are considerably longer. There's ones in New York that are probably considerably worse than that. Moving in the furniture with dollies, I don't think there's a problem. There's actually our idea, response to your question, Carmel, where you asked them, and the answer was they're going to move it around the front. We didn't like that either. And so we challenged the team to come back with a solution. And the solution was, let's take it in the side, let's take it in the garage where we control it. Stairs, foldable ramps, they're used everywhere all the time. The geometry of that will work. 6.5 feet will give us what we need to move in. We don't really want and won't permit trucks on Orange Road. The residents live there, as we heard. We wouldn't do that. Somebody unloading luggage at the hotel, I'll try to find out what that's about, because I've never heard of that, but I guess people do strange things. We certainly would not allow move-ins in the front. And the other thing I just want to point out, and Mr. Sokic is in the back here, I'm going to point you out, Kristen, if you don't mind, from ProPark, who manages the garage. So may have any concern about the garage. There is no full parking sign. They don't even have a full parking sign. Maybe somebody had something there temporarily. It wasn't ours. There's 200, 300 empty spaces in that garage every day. I can tell you that the Valley and Bloom project would very much love to have more parking revenue than is there, and there is no full sign. But our residents for the MC will be required to park off-site. Nobody's going to be parking on the street. That's not going to be permitted. Obviously, other testimony will be given about the parking within our building and utilizing the garage, which is, frankly, very, very empty relative to the amount of spaces. And when the lift and slide system's completed in a few months, there's another 116 coming on. But I'll let others speak to that. I just wanted to talk to some of those management points. If there's any other question on what I've spoken to that you want to ask, please let me know.
Yeah,
Try to keep that under 10 minutes.
I still, Brian, don't understand how you're going to control where people are parking their moving vehicles to load and unload when there's not going to be somebody on site to monitor it.
Well, you can't get in the building unless you have a fob.
So I come in, so let me paint you a picture. I come in and I make my initial move-in.
Right.
And I have my U-Haul truck, and I'm moving in from wherever. And so I've got the old sofa from my, I've got this, I've got that. I move in, and I got my key to get in my apartment. And then the real move-in happens 3 days later when the truck with all the real stuff comes in. And hey, I got the key to my apartment, I got the key to the front door, there's nobody there, boom, in the elevator, up, done. Tell me that won't happen.
I don't think I can tell you that.
I know you can't
Would
tell,
not happen.
I know you
But
can't
we
tell me
will
that won't
not
happen.
be
So
permitted
how are you going to control what happens when nobody is there? I think the answer to that question is you can't. In all good faith, you can't control it. And my point in making this point,
Right.
my point to you in making this point is that you've presented us with a plan, okay? And the plan, it sounds good, but it's not feasible. You can't guarantee that this plan will work because there's nobody there at the building to control, to make sure that the plan executes the way that you propose it to execute. You have a loading zone that's as far away from the door as it can possibly be without it being in front of another building, okay? And you have this convenient area in front of the building that is half the distance to the doors that you want people to move in. All right? So all I'm saying is that we need a realistic plan, all right? And this loading zone, while it looks nice here, I have my doubts as to how effective it is going to be over the operation of the building.
I hear your concerns. I'm not going to say that's what everybody else does, even though it is what
And you
everybody else
can't.
does, 'cause that's not an answer.
And you can't say that because you know what, you're dealing with a unique situation here where you're dealing with you're dealing not on the main street, but you're around the corner now. You've got residential houses across the street, you've got a school, and you've got a parking garage, and you've got Board of Education. You're not in the middle of downtown, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
You're on this cusp. You're in this transitional area. And how they would move in New York and how they would move in Jersey City or Hoboken is completely irrelevant to this
I wasn't
particular
su-
location. But your witness mentioned, I heard mentions of New York, and
I can't- Yeah.
testimony that, in my opinion, it shouldn't be because an average, but this is not an average location. So all of that is, kind of goes out the window for me.
I'd like to, I hear you. I agree with your perception of the comments you heard. New York, Jersey City, Hoboken, we've built a dozen projects in Jersey City and Hoboken. It doesn't apply to Montclair. The Centro Verde Drive actually gives a tremendous opportunity to have a natural place to have a loading. I could tell you the way that we will control it is that when somebody moves in, their lease will require that we control the move-in. It will require that they're fully responsible for all damage. It will require that somebody from our management will be there at the time they move in. If they elect to try to come back the next day with more furniture, I guess
There's nothing you can do about it.
can't prevent, but the point is, we're going to make sure somebody moves in. If they show up and say, okay, I'm moving in, and here's my chair and my lamp.
You're going to say you can't.
No, we're going to say, we want to know when the rest of your move-in occurs. We've
And
been
they'll-
doing this for a
and
long,
they'll
long
say,
time.
hey, yeah, I'm going to come next week. I'm going to come next week, and tomorrow, the U-Haul pulls up. What I'm saying is, again, you can't, you're trying to make us believe that you can control something that you can't control. And the reason why you can't control it is because there's nobody there monitoring what's going on.
I would say.
I would almost, if you had a concierge or you had that parking guy who's valet parking, if he was in some place that was going to manage this or monitor this, I could almost believe it. But I can't believe that monitoring this remote from other offices in town is going to be effective in doing that. And, you know, with nobody there, basically, once somebody has the key, they can do with whatever the hell they want to do. That's a fact.
The mother's giving them a couch.
I will never be.
Their friend is giving them,
I
you
hear
know.
more. I'll never be argumentative, I think you know that, but I will tell you that I've been doing this a very long time, thousands and thousands of units, the vast majority of which have not had a concierge, and the way you control it is you make it very, very difficult for somebody to break the rules. If they want to break the rules, it's going to possibly cost them. And frankly, what we find is that if you're nice to people and you're clear and you give good quality direction and you don't make it confusing, most people want to follow, because also it costs them money and time to try to come more than one time. The other thing that we're finding, and it's not just us, everybody in apartment management is finding this, more and more the deliveries are not from a moving van, right? They're going to come from Mayfair or something else. So we also require that that be coordinated. And without naming names, I can tell you some of the biggest players in the business. Without naming a name, I will tell you that the head of all customer management for a REIT that manages over 80,000 units, that is nationwide, told me, and I've gotten to know this woman very well, that her number one issue that she's clamping down on is not move-ins, it's packages. And so
Everybody shopping
we've
online.
all become very, very aware of this. So we're using intelligent lockers, and we're not permitting, so if there's a package in the lobby that gets left, we're going to tell the tenant. It says in the lease they can't. If they do it again, they're going to get a fine, and eventually people stop. So
Well,
all I'm saying is we're
let's
gonna
go
do
back
it.
to moving in. Let me suggest
Yeah.
that, again, be realistic, be flexible also, because if your tenants have U-Hauls that can get into your garage, then, you know, they should block a lane in the garage, which is not going to have heavy traffic for only tenants.
I think
And they should use that. They should use that instead of being told, oh, you got to go park on the corner, and then walk around the street.
You make a very good point, and thank you for reminding me. For those who have a smaller truck, come with a friend, or have a delivery from somebody that's a small stray truck, we're not going to have them park and even block. They can just pull into the garage, probably, for sure. But it's not.
But have that
dependent.
have that as part of your plan.
Yeah, no, we could do that. And in fact, I think what we should do, in fairness, instead of trying to explain it to you well, it's early, right? It's only 10:35 in Montclair. I feel like it's easy. Look, I start an hour-long explanation. Now, we'll come back to you with something in writing and show it to you, because they're fair points that you're raising. I'm only trying to say that a lot of this is going in this direction. We're involved with this type of thing on a regular basis, and the apps that have been developed and the controls that have been developed, the IoT. the Internet of Things. Every device in this building will be on the internet. Every lock will be on the internet, front door locks, everything.
But just like your best computer, it's only as good as...
The fiber optic in Bloomfield Avenue. So.
And one of the reasons why, this is an issue is because, I mean, you hear it right now. You've heard people who are living across the street who are having problems that are related to these things that nobody's monitoring, all right? And that nobody, unless there's somebody there, nobody's going to be aware of. I mean, the contractor is not going to say, hey, I had a problem with the neighbors. Contractor's not going to want to say that.
The only comment I'm going to make is that the name of the contractor for this building will not be Avison Young. Can't tell you who it'll be, but I know it won't be them. So that's the only thing I can say.
You know, but if there's an issue, you know, since there's only a few neighbors across the street, it might be worthwhile to set up some way that they can, you know, address issues, so that, you know.
We will do that.
Because, you know, it has been a long road.
We will definitely do that. And the other benefit of this building is, first of all, it's 50 feet tall, not 120 feet tall. It's not steel, it's wood. And it's set back very, very substantially. So not only does that provide for a patio, and by the way, that area Mr. Rebecca was pointing out is 30 feet deep.
And we
so
have...
we'll move it around and make it work.
And you know,
the construction will be far back, is my point.
Need to keep an eye on what's going on there. I'm sure that the lady sitting here didn't imagine that sign.
No.
It was there for, I don't know how long it was there, but I'm sure she didn't imagine it. So it was there for a reason.
It is not their sign, so whether, we don't know. We're going to find out.
And that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Just
I think you should give your card to these ladies.
I will do that. I will do that. I have no problem. I've given it to anybody who's ever come up. I've probably given 100 cards. But there is a possibility that had to do with the construction on Orange Road at the lift and slide. I don't know if somebody had something there. But as you'll hear from our parking and from Mr. Sokich, he usually comes to 3 or 4 meetings before he gets to talk about the parking. So he's used to it. Seymour Street, I think it was 7.
It's because you saved the best for last, right?
But as he'll tell you, there's a substantial amount of empty space, you know, in the garage. So.
I have a question. You're not going to have a supervisor or superintendent on site?
You don't have a superintendent on site. You have a superintendent will be there probably every day.
Right.
But they're not living there like they used to be. That's, yeah. But they'll probably be there, somebody there every day.
Wouldn't that be part of your management plan if you have a superintendent there during the day?
That's my point. When I come back, when I say control
right, because you're making it sound like there's not going to be anybody there. It's
all
going to be remote.
When somebody moves in, somebody's there. Now, if they show up, to Chairman's point, with 2 tables and a chair, and say I'm moved in and I'm sneaking in the next day in the front, somebody's going to probably be there. If they do any damage to the lobby, they're going to pay for it. We have surveillance cameras everywhere.
But I can move in very nicely and not do damage to the lobby because I don't want to damage my stuff. You know,
you've made very good points. We will come back to the plan.
And no one's going to move in through the lobby. They're going to slide in around back.
Well, if they can get access to the elevator. If I can't get access to the elevator, I go up the lobby elevator.
The truck fits. I thought you said that there's a height restriction that a big truck couldn't get through.
Well, some trucks could fit in there.
They could.
There are many, many trucks that could fit in there. And frankly, again, you were asking an architect and, you know, perhaps Mr. Webb and others from engineering, I'm not even sure the height, but many trucks are under 8.5 feet that could deliver, like I mentioned, Mayfair and what? Wayfair, sorry. And West Elm and companies like that, their trucks may fit in there, and we'll encourage, to your point, John, we'll encourage them to come in the garage, you know, and park in an area that would work. The whole thing is to make it work well, take advantage of Central Verde Drive, as sort of, like in the old days when you had an alley that you could do that. That's a benefit, frankly, I don't know that we've had a project like that in a very long time that's had that opportunity. So
but perhaps you can find an area on the first floor inside the garage that you can use for loading.
Yeah. Well, that they looked at, and inside where that stair is. That'll do that.
Doesn't your plan call for a 24/7 valet service?
Well, that's why I said I didn't want to go too far down, and I think Mr. Troutner said that as well. Our plan initially called for putting in these parking stackers. After we dug in deep to some of the questions, and Mr. Giosa's, your parking consultant's questions and his comments, we saw how much empty space there was in the Orange Road deck, even at the worst time. And I'm not going to start to even begin to talk about their testimony, but we didn't even think that it made sense to ask the board to exercise your concerns over parking spaces that are not connected to the ground, or whatever that language is in your plan, which I recognize it's there. It's 30 or 40 years old, but it's there. So the only reason for a valet was to operate the lifts, because we don't want residents doing that. We believe that they would be empty most of the time. And we believe that there's so many spaces in the garage that it's more appropriate to use the empty space. I think it's even encouraged in the redevelopment plan. So I'm going to have to defer and let them, I'm not passing the buck, but that's what that was there for. But I can also tell you that a car valet is not going to get involved with move-ins and that type of thing anyway. It would be from Pro Park, any valet, and they stick to their job of moving cars, and that's what they're insured for, and that's what they're contracted for. But the only reason we're going to have the valet is for those lifts. We don't think we need them. We'd like to present that to the board. If you would be so inclined to agree with us, then we wouldn't have it. And Mr. Sokich will be able to show you just how empty this garage is. It just goes to show the usage of cars has dropped dramatically.
Well, you've been closed for a long time as well. I mean, the hotel has been operating, and it's been...
No, but Valley and Bloom is
the,
100%.
And the street's been closed off, and it's been a...
No, but
it'll be interesting to see. I think you're correct. We can't discuss it all now.
Yeah,
but
I'm
it
just
is going to be
saying that
interesting
the
to see.
usage that was planned is far less. So we'll let them come back and look at it.
If so, that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. It was offered as testimony, so you do have the right to ask.
Just to the last point, would you have you're thinking about using the parking deck as a major source of capacity for this. Would you look at the pedestrian access plan between the deck and your building? Because there's no handicap access right now or crosswalk. So,
I'm sure Mr. Webb would
Yeah,
I'm sure he has looked at that. Yeah.
I just want to save you time because it's not on the plan right now, and it's something that could be addressed rather easily. So I guess my only big question is, if there's so much parking available in the parking deck, and we'll hear about that, and Valley Central Verde Way is such a perfect opportunity for a support function to these buildings for delivery. Couldn't there be a way to create a passageway, a doorway on Central Verde Drive and give up 2 parking spots so that you could have a solution that makes sense?
Really not going to get to
No,
try
I mean,
to
just
testify with you about
conceptually.
it. We're not going to touch the, we're not going to touch the garage. That's not part of this application.
No, not touching.
Actually, I actually, just to clarify, Mr. Urbag, you're suggesting lose 2 parking spaces inside the MC residences that are being proposed,
Well, one spot.
or lose, right? But and the suggestion is for move-in or loading. Is that that's the part I lost? Oh,
Just as a service entrance that connects to the loading area.
Well, that's what we did. That's what we did. We have that, and Mr. Johnson pointed that out. We have an entrance now that we created for access to that garage. It required a set of steps because there's a grade change, a significant grade change. That's what we talked about. Maybe you didn't see it on the plan.
I didn't follow it.
No, it's a good
hard
point
to
you're
see,
making. It's an absolutely good point.
But couldn't there be some, engineering, architectural, that's fine, but I just.
We've had those folks look at it. Yeah, that's what they've done.
And it can't be done.
No, we've done it. That's what's on our plan.
Okay.
I'm just not sure what you're...
I'm confused. You're saying you're going to manage, you're going to go all this trouble with contract language and video cameras and electronically controlled doors to make sure that somebody doesn't enter through the main door. Why couldn't you just give them access off of Central Verde?
All right, so I think the answer is we did, we will, it's in the plan, but that's also controlled. You can't just show up and open a door and walk in the garage. Yeah. We have I think we'll show you next time, on the plan, there's an access from the loading area into the garage.
Okay, so it will be clear to all of us and to your tenants that if they have choice of the shortest distance, it's going to be right by that loading area on Central Verde through the garage area.
It's the only choice they'll have. as much as we can control it. And as we said, we'll come back with a plan.
The original proposal was to go out on the sidewalk. Now, there is, in the latest plans, there is a refuse loading room that's behind the retail store, but there are a set of stairs that take that up to the garage. And you were talking about putting ramps on that stairwell so that it could be used for moving, so that you could go actually into the garage through that refuse room and then go into the interior.
It's just a half a flight, there's no landing.
Why did we, but you made the point that you said the.
Because that was still,
the
because,
furthest
because,
possible way.
well, because it is still the furthest possible place to go. It's still a long distance. And my point wasn't that that what they're proposing is ineffectual. It's better than, I think it's better than walking out on the street, but it's still on the opposite side of the building that they have to, so isn't, let's not pretend that people aren't going to try and get closer. And it's going to be very hard to regulate that, and that if it's possible, let them pull right up to the elevator in the entrance. If it's possible, let them do that instead of making them go on the other side of the building and through the garage.
And actually, Mr. Rebecca's question just made me think of one other clarification, so thank you. We always had an access from the side into the restaurant for delivery, which we think is really calling it a food hall, but just call it the retail for now, and for any mechanical and meter reading and so forth. Carmel, when you made the comment, and we were sitting there listening, we said, you're 100% right, even though technically they can go and dolly around to the front. We didn't like it. So we said to the team, look, you have to figure out a way. They said, well, we can't change the grade of Central Verde Drive, so we could put in a half flight. We looked at what the pitch was that was capable with the expandable ramps, talked to moving companies, made sure it would work, and that's what we put in.
Okay.
So it didn't go from 0 to 100, it went from 75, because the other loading is probably every day. The move-ins, as you said, were very infrequent, so. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the witness from anyone? Okay. Next hearing, next continuation of this.
The November 4th.
I don't know if I'm good or not.
I hope you can make it. November 4th, that's our next, our first scheduled meeting for November.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Okay. November 4th.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
No bills, no new business, no old business. Thank you, everyone.
We're done. Yes.
Good night.
Thank you.